This is Audible.
Earning Her Love, written by Hazel Gower, narrated by Andrea Mitchell. Chapter 1. Mia tried not to laugh as she glanced at the other women in class. They practically drooled watching the gorgeous man Alex hold out his arms and wait for his niece to swim to him. Mia nudged her friend as their sons both swam to them. "Beth, eyes forward on Landon." Mia's own son, Zane, beamed up at her. "Mommy, did you seize me? I swam real far and was super fasted." "I saw you. You're amazing." Mia held on to her 4-year-old, giving his legs a rest from treading water. "Yeah, I'm a super swimmer nows." Nodding, Mia looked around at the angry faces on some of the children as they got cross at their mothers for not watching them swim. She couldn't help but giggle. The reason they hadn't seen their children smiled at his niece, Olivia, and his muscles bulged as he cuddled her to his bare, tattooed toned chest. "Mommy, you're not listening." Shaking her head, Mia returned her gaze to her son. She felt heat rise to her cheeks as she realized she'd been staring at the masculine perfection like other women. "Sorry, Zane. What did you say?" "Isa said, can Landon sleep over tonight? I want to show him my new Skylander." "Not tonight, honey. Mommy has to work. You will be at Landon's while I work. You can show him the Skylander then. Or, how about Friday after swimming? He can sleep over." "Yay!" Zane squealed. "Landon, you staying on Friday." Beth smiled when Mia turned to her. "Thanks. Are you sure you can take him?" "Yeah, Landon is no problem." "So?" Beth smirked. "You got caught, didn't you?" Mia blew a raspberry at her friend and felt the heat crawl up her face and knew she'd be bright red. She wanted to say no, but she had been snared by the handsome man. Ha! Handsome was a modest way to describe Alex Douglas. He was drop-dead gorgeous, with jet black hair shaved to his head, eyes that were the darkest Mia had ever seen, a chiseled jaw with a 5 o'clock shadow, and full, thick lips that had women coming just from viewing his rugged perfection. The body adding to his looks was just cruel. He was magnificent, tall, roughly 6'2", and all thick, solid muscle covered in tattoos. Mia bet female criminals threw themselves at him, begging to be arrested. Shrugging her shoulders, she sighed at Beth. "I'm only human." Beth grinned, and they listened as the instructor told them that was all for the day, and she would see them Friday. Mia held Zane tight as they walked to the stairs of the pool. She watched as the other mothers did the same, and noticed that a lot of them were wearing what looked to be new swimsuits, and they had either lost weight or were breathing in and holding everything in as they got out and walked to the change rooms. Mia rolled her eyes. She felt sorry for the women. Mia was through with men. She'd learned her lesson with Zane's father, and she vowed to never be something she wasn't, for anyone. Mia got out of the water and carried Zane to the change rooms. She placed Zane on the seat and went to the locker, getting her backpack out, then moved to the back corner of the room. Beth soon joined her. "Do you think any of these women have a chance with Mr. Alex the hottie?" Beth glanced over at the women in question. Mia shrugged. "Maybe." "He was looking at you, Mia. He might ask you out." Mia couldn't help but laugh at Beth. "Oh, come on, Beth. There is no way Alex Douglas was looking at me. I have no chance with him. Men like Alex are too hyped up on steroids and image conscious to go out with a woman bigger than a size 8. Women like me don't have a chance because not only do I have a kid, but I have an ass, roll breasts, and a stomach because I like to eat." Mia dried Zane and got him dressed before she did herself. Beth giggled. "He's a cop, I heard, so I don't think he's on steroids." "Of course. Then he'll be one of those, my body is a temple and I watch what I put into it. I mean, come on. There is no way I'm his type. His body is pure muscle, and well, just look at me." Mia pointed to her flabby belly and the faded stretch marks and thick, solid thighs. "Yeah, you're probably right, but just imagine him in his uniform." Beth sighed, and a dreamy look came over her face. Mia gritted her teeth and resisted the urge to fantasize about Alex in uniform as she finished getting ready and left the change rooms. It was the 3rd time Alex had taken his niece Olivia to swimming. The first time he'd been reluctant, but his brother Chad had begged him to go swimming with Olivia. Chad had promised his wife Lana that swimming would be something he organized and dealt with. But on that particular day, he had to work, and both Owen and Lockie were unavailable to take their niece. So, on one of the few days he had off, Alex had given in and taken Olivia. It only took one time for him to see her, Mia. And Alex asked Chad and Lana if he could take over swimming lessons and it'd be his and Olivia's special thing. Alex had been glad when they both agreed, no questions asked. He wouldn't admit it out loud, but the first time he'd come to swimming lessons, he'd become intrigued by Mia. She was one of the only mothers who didn't flaunt themselves or stare at him. When she smiled, her eyes brightened and her cheeks dimpled. She was beautiful, with a full, shapely body, huge breasts, a wide waist, and thick, strong thighs. Her long strawberry blonde hair sat just above her ass. Her face was stunning, with big chocolate brown eyes, long lashes, and small pink lips. Her laugh was magical and full of life and had him eager to find out more about her. Alex chuckled as he listened to Mia through the thin walls as she told her friend what she thought of him. She sounded a little bitter, and he didn't know if he should feel offended that she judged him so harshly without even knowing him. Giving his niece his phone to play with while he got dressed and gathered their things, he listened to the women talk. He dressed Olivia, and when the talking stopped, he picked her up and walked out of the change rooms and toward the car park. He spotted Mia getting her son into a beat-up car that looked a good 25 years old. Walking to Mia, he watched her ass wiggle as she belted her son into the car seat. She had a great ass, full and round. Images of him cupping her ass cheeks as he sank his cock into her pussy flashed before him. He groaned, reminding himself that now wasn't the time. Not only did he have his niece, but he barely knew the woman. "Hi," he said as she backed out of the car. Mia's eyes widened, and she looked startled. Hi." Mia nibbled on her lip, and he zoned in on the action. "I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Alex Douglas, and this little beauty is my niece Olivia." He kissed Olivia's forehead, and she giggled. He gripped Olivia with one arm and held his other hand out. Mia stared at his hand, and he thought she wasn't going to take it. Slowly, she placed her small hand in his, and he wrapped his fingers around hers. "I'm Mia Langston. In the car is Zane, my son." She tugged at her hand to get it back, but for some reason, he didn't want to give it back. He held on to it tighter. "Nice to meet you, Mia. I was wondering if you'd like to get a coffee and let the kids play somewhere." Mia tugged her hand again, and when she figured out he wasn't giving it back, she narrowed her eyes and sighed. "Why? Why me?" "Why not you?" Mia tugged on her hand again, and this time he reluctantly released his hold. Olivia squealed with joy at the game she was playing on his phone. Mia glanced into her car and then back at him. "Fine, but I only have a half hour to spare before I have to go get ready for work. Let's go to Maka's. The kids can play there. The closest one is just around the corner. I'll see you there." Alex smiled at her. "I'll see you there." Mia nodded and walked to the driver's side of her bomb of a car. He shook his head as he heard her mumble, "We'll see." Walking to his car, he placed their bags inside and put Olivia in her car seat and buckled her up. He then got in the driver's side, fastened his own seatbelt up, put the keys in the ignition, and drove to McDonald's. Alex parked his car next to Mia's bomb, got Olivia out, and walked into Maka's. He spotted Mia sitting on a seat with her son, who had an ice cream. She held a drink cup. Mia seemed surprised when she saw him. Her eyes widened, and her mouth opened and shut a couple of times as he walked over to her and placed Olivia down. "Do you mind if Olivia stays here while I go get her an ice cream and get myself a coffee?" Yeah, sure." "Do you want anything else?" he asked. Mia shook her head, and he turned and went to the register. Alex felt Mia's eyes on him, and he straightened his shoulders, feeling insecure for the first time in many, many years. He ordered a coffee, ice cream, burger, and chips. He came back and set Olivia up with her ice cream and dived into his food. Mia didn't say anything. She even tried looking anywhere but at him. Groaning, he swallowed the food in his mouth. "So, any Mr. Lexington?" Alex knew there wasn't. He'd heard from one of the other mothers that she was a single mother. "No." Alex waited for her to say more, but when she didn't say anything, he narrowed his eyes at her. You're not going to ask me if there's a Mrs. Douglas. Nope. Mia was different already from the women he knew. She didn't talk nonstop. There is no Mrs. Douglas. Mia nodded and took a sip of her drink. I knew. If you didn't guess by now, you and your brothers are a big conversation topic at swimming. Well, with the other women. Olivia's father took her at the start, but then Lockie took over, and the week before you first brought Olivia, Owen was with her. The other women now get to swimming 20 minutes early, and they eagerly wait to see which Douglas will bring Olivia. He sighed. Great. He knew he was being watched. He knew they were checking him out. But he thought most were just anxious because he was the only guy in the class. He hoped the novelty would wear off. Well, I'll be bringing Olivia into swimming from now on. Unless I get called into work, but I work mostly nights. Oh, okay. I think that will be good. It's a nice thing for you two to do. Olivia is lucky to have such a wonderful uncle. The kids finished their ice creams, and he and Mia took them out to the play area and watched them. They sat silent for a moment as they watched the children. Alex admitted he had never had a problem with women not talking to him before. Usually, they did all the talking, and he found out everything he needed to without barely talking himself. Mia was different, though. She didn't tell him anything, and when he asked, most of her questions were short. Are you from around here? He asked. Nope. I am. I grew up close by. I live about 15 minutes from here. How far away did you live before you moved here? She shrugged. About an hour and a half north. What do you do for a job? I'm a checkout chick. I'm permanent part-time. Mia didn't even turn to look at him when she answered. What do you do with Zane while you work? This time, she turned to him. Mia looked him straight in the eyes. He goes to a family daycare 1 day a week. The lady is great. My best friend Beth takes him twice a week, and I take her son twice a week. She smiled. I'm lucky to have a job that's so flexible. The extra money helps me out big time. I know Centerlink thinks that it gives me enough to live on, but what they give me barely covers the essentials. She held up her hand. And before you ask, no, I don't get anything from Zane's father. He signed away his paternal rights. Alex didn't know what to say for a moment. Mia sounded very defensive about her situation. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to be rude or prying into your situation. Mia ran her fingers through her hair. Sorry. I hate leaving him, and when people meet me, they want to know the story, and they always think they have a better way to help me. She closed her eyes for a moment before she opened them again. Look, I'm sorry. I have to go. Maybe I'll talk to you later. With that, she grabbed her kid and rushed away. Alex stared after her, unsure what to do. He never had a woman treat him like Mia had, and he didn't know how he felt. Alex was eager to find out more about her, and that was one thing he intended to do. Over the next couple of weeks, Alex took Olivia to swimming lessons, and he learned about Mia. He was amazed that she'd done so well. She'd had her child at 17, and from what little he could gather, her parents had abandoned her, and she raised Zane on her own. When he found out her age, he told himself to stay away, that she was way too young, clearly too young for him, and not interested anyway. He thought Mia looked young, but he'd assumed she was at least in her mid-20s. Mia didn't talk to him again, and when he did look at her, it was to see her blushing and avoiding him. But by the 4th week, he was really struggling not to ask her out or to turn up at her apartment. Alex became more interested and attracted to Mia the more he saw her and learned about her. Alex decided that the next time he saw Mia, he would ask her out. He couldn't get her off his mind, and all the signs he waited for were there. When she was around, his heart beat faster. He grew hard. He followed any movement she made. He worried about her, and she was all he thought about. He never had all those things before. He promised himself long ago he would never settle. He wanted what his parents, grandparents, and great-grandparents had. His brother Chad had it with his wife Lana, and Alex wanted it too. Chapter 2. Mia silently begged the light to turn green. Not only was she late for work, but her car didn't sound like it was going to last much longer. Zane sat in his car seat making explosion sounds with his 2 action figures. Mia knew she was way overdue for a service, but Grant would just tell her the same thing he had said last time. She needed a new car. Mia couldn't afford a new car. She just paid the rent, phone, and electricity bills, and this week was a speech therapy for Zane. So, she had to find the money somewhere in her non-existent funds for that, even though she was broke beyond belief. The light finally turned green, and she put her foot down on the gas pedal. The car made a sputtering noise, and then it stopped completely. Cars honked around her. She tried to start the car again, but nothing happened. She couldn't even turn her hazard lights on. Crap! Mommy! Sorry, sweetheart. Mommy can't talk right now. She looked around the busy intersection and knew she had to call someone before she was hit by a car. Grabbing her bag off the passenger seat, she reached into it and got her mobile out and dialed 000. Hello, what service would you like to be connected to? Ambulance, fire station, or police? Police, please. One moment, please. Hello, Blacktown Police Department. Hello? My car's broken down on 7th Street in the overtaking lane at the lights before the Juniper left turn. I'll be calling a tow truck, but since I have my 4-year-old son in the car, I thought I'd just call to be safe. You did the right thing, ma'am. That is a very busy road. I'll send someone to help right away. Thank you. Mia hung up and then called Grant's garage. Grant had a tow truck and she asked him to come and get her. Grant was a friend of her parents, or he used to be. He didn't agree with how her family treated her when she fell pregnant with Zane, and he helped her out from time to time. Gazing around at the car speeding by, Mia thought it best she and Zane get out of the car. Turning, she smiled at Zane. Mummy's car is broken. I'm getting out, then I'll get you. Zane nodded. Okay's, Mommy. She undid her seatbelt and turned and smiled at her son just as the car sped toward them. Mia heard the brakes screeching, and she prayed they would be okay. That was the last thing she thought before she felt herself fly through the air. Alex had 10 minutes left, and he was done with his shift. He'd worked 13 hours and was exhausted. He couldn't wait to get home and go to bed. Tomorrow was swimming, and he intended to ask Mia out. A call came over his radio, and he knew he should ignore it, but he was just 2 streets away. Alex answered the call, telling them he'd deal with it. As he came around the corner, he saw a poo-colored bomb sitting in the overtaking lane. He furrowed his brows. The car was familiar. It looked just like Mia's wreck of a car. He put his lights on just as a red car came flying around the corner and right into the bomb of a car. The windshield shattered as a female body flew from it and landed on the ground. Calling dispatch, he told them as quickly as he could what had happened so he could get more help and they could send an ambulance. A sickening feeling settled in his bones as he parked and set up a perimeter, making sure it was safe before he went over to the woman. He tried to think positive thoughts and deny his edgy feeling. Blood gushed from her head, and her body was covered in deep cuts that oozed more blood. She was damn lucky to be alive. She groaned, and her eyes fluttered. Zane, my baby, please make sure he's okay. As the beautiful dark brown eyes opened, Alex's heart sank. Mia, his Mia, was hurt. Glancing over at her car, he debated whether he should leave her and go check on Zane or stay with her. He heard sirens in the distance. Please, she begged. Alex was surprised that Mia was even alive, let alone conscious enough to talk. He wanted to touch her, but he was scared, terrified that he could hurt her further. All he could do was nod and do what she wanted. Okay, I'll be right back. He walked to the car to see a screaming Zane. The back of the car was crumpled, but Alex could see the other car was in worse condition. It was a cheap plastic one. Thanks to Mia's car being really old, it was metal. The passenger door wouldn't open, so he tried the front, and it clicked open. Zane instantly stopped crying when he saw him. I knows yous. You's Olivia's uncles. Alex tried to slow his speeding heart. Zane seemed fine. Kids were resilient. He gazed back in Mia's direction, and for the first time in many years, he prayed. He was grateful she was young, because hopefully it would help her to recover. He worried, though. She wasn't tall. He would guess her lucky to be 5'2". He hoped her shapely body with its cushioning helped her fall. Alex regretted not asking her out sooner, not spending time to get to know her. He'd been a fool. He'd been attracted to her and was going to ask her out, so he looked into her. When he found out her age, he stayed away. He was just over a month from his 40th birthday, and Mia was all of 21. Barely. Alex thought she looked young, but she had a 4-year-old son, so he thought she must be older. Once he found out her age, he knew she was way too young and he needed to stay away. The problem was, he couldn't stop thinking about the strawberry blonde-haired beauty. His dad and even his younger brother Chad said over and over that when you found the one, you just knew. She was the person you couldn't stop thinking about. She was the one who got your heart racing every time you saw her. Alex was close to his family. He usually spoke to Owen, but Alex had mentioned to Chad that he liked Mia. And since then, Chad had been on his case, telling him that if Mia was the one, he wouldn't let age be a problem. Chad told him not to stuff things up, like he already had wasting time he could spend with her. Now he regretted not listening to Chad. Alex was almost 40 and hadn't found anyone. But as his heart felt like it was about to break at what was happening around him, he thought he could be wrong. He'd finally decided to ask her out, and this happened. Looking at the cute blonde-haired boy, he forced a smile. "Yes, I'm Olivia's Uncle Alex. I take her swimming." Zane nodded his head. "Uh-huh, I likes Olivia. I'm bigger than her. Isa just turned 4. His niece Olivia was 3. Her swimming skills were super advanced, and she had been placed in a higher age group. Alex adored Olivia. The paramedics came over, and Alex turned to them, noticing out of the corner of his eye another set of paramedics with Mia. "Hi, I was the first on the scene. I saw it happen. Mia was thrown from her seat as the car behind hit her vehicle. This is Zane, her 4-year-old son. The passenger door doesn't open." Alex knew the paramedic, John. He'd worked with him before. "Do you know the victims?" John asked. Opening his mouth, he closed it as an old short guy in a mechanic's uniform ran over to him. "Oh, God, they won't let me over to Mia. Is Zane okay?" Alex eased out of the car and stared at the balding man. Alex knew he wasn't Mia's father. From the information he had gathered, Mia's father was a very powerful businessman who was known all throughout the building industry. Alex's brother Owen dealt with him on occasion. "You are associated with Miss Lexington. How?" "Oh, sorry. I'm her mechanic, Grant, but I'm a friend, too." Alex raised his eyebrow at the last. "A friend?" The man turned red. "Well, yes. I was a friend of her parents." He looked around and lowered his voice. "They disowned her when she got pregnant at 16. She was almost 17, but that didn't sound any better, they thought. I didn't agree with how they cut her off." The old man sighed. "I'm all she's got, besides that boy there and a couple of girlfriends." Shit. Alex didn't need to know that. Not now, when his heart was already shattering. He knew she didn't have anything to do with her parents, but he had hoped she had other people. People who helped her and that she could rely on. Glancing at the boy who the medics were talking to as they carefully lifted him out of his seat, his heart skipped. Alex knew he had to help. If Mia had no one, Zane would go into foster care with strangers while she was in the hospital. He knew with the injuries she had, she might not survive. But he wouldn't let himself think of that happening. "She has me. I'm Alex. I've been seeing Mia." It wasn't a complete lie. Alex had seen Mia every Monday and Friday morning. He'd also been to McDonald's with her once. This time, it was Grant who raised his eyebrow. "Early. She hasn't mentioned you." He shrugged. "It's new." "Yeah, like a couple of minutes." Grant crossed his arm over his chest and glared at him. John came and stood next to him with Zane in his arms. "He seems fine. The car child seat saved him from any harm, but we'll take him to the hospital to get him checked out just in case." "Sure, Alex didn't get to finish. "Alex!" Zane threw himself into his arms. "I wants my mommy!" Cuddling the little guy close, Alex looked over to see Mia on a gurney being put into the ambulance. He turned to John. "I'll go with you. I can't be on this case as I'm involved with the victim. I'll go tell Officer Dirk what I saw and about my relationship with Mia." John tried to take Zane back from him, but the little boy wouldn't let Alex go. In the end, Alex just took Zane with him. Officer Daniel Dirk was talking to the 2 men who'd been in the red car. Seeing Alex, Daniel excused himself and came over to him. "I've been told you were the first on the scene," Daniel said. "Yes. I can't be involved in it because the victim, Mia Lexington, I'm involved with her. This is her son, Zane." Daniel's eyes flashed, showing his surprise before he quickly hid it. "Well, from what I hear, she's a very lucky woman. They have her stable, I've been told. Daniel glanced at Zane and looked back to Alex. Would you like me to contact the station and tell them your situation? Well, you need to leave. Alex was friends with Daniel, but they weren't close. Alex looked down at Zane, who seemed to be taking everything in, unsure of what to say or do. Grant had told him Mia had no one. Alex knew from his own info that she was a single mother. He should really stay out of everything. But as his eyes locked with the big, innocent brown ones, he knew he had to help. Yeah, I'd appreciate that. I'll call when I get a chance. I'll come in and give my statement as soon as I can get my parents to look after Zane, and I know Mia's doing okay. Sure. Look after your girl, a woman, and I'll be waiting when you're ready. Smoldering his groan at Daniel's comment about Mia being a girl, Alex walked over to John and sat Zane down in the back of the ambulance. Buddy, I need you to go with John. I don't have a seat in the patrol car for you. Zane looked terrified, and Alex moaned. He knew he couldn't leave him. Fine, let me give my keys to the other officer and call work. I'll be right back. Zane gave a shy smile, and he wandered back over to Daniel. Zane was asleep on his lap as he waited for information on Mia. Alex had called his brother Owen to pick his car up and drop it off at the hospital with Mia's car seat in it. He had then called his parents, who told him they would be there as soon as they could. That was over 2 hours ago. When Zane had fallen asleep on him, he called his work, asking for leave and telling them he would be in to give his statement when he could get a babysitter. Grant, the mechanic, came in. Hi, have you heard anything? Not much. I know she went into surgery for swelling in her brain, and she has a broken leg. Grant plunked down on the chair across from him. Grant ran his fingers over his balding head. I called her parents. They wouldn't even give me the chance to tell them anything. As soon as I said her name, they hung up on me. Assholes, Alex hissed and clenched his fist. Grant nodded. Yeah, I knew her father in high school. I never would have expected this from him. Alex sighed. In his profession, he'd seen and heard about a lot of things people didn't think others would do. They sat for another 20 minutes before his mother and father came. Alex, I'm sorry it took us so long. Have you heard anything? His mom rushed to him, sitting on the seat next to him and cuddling him as best she could. Oh, this must be her son. Zane, right? Yeah. Alex brushed Zane's hair off his face. Could you or Dad take him for a while? I have some friends in here that owe me some favors. I'm going to see if they can help me find out some information. Sure, go. We're fine. His dad said as he came and gently lifted the sleeping boy from his lap. When Alex stood, his father sat down in his chair. That's Grant. He's a friend of Mia's. Alex pointed to Grant. His mother smiled at Grant. Hi, I'm Catherine, and this is my husband Charles. I'm sorry we're meeting on these terms. Alex left them to talk while he went to find Kim. She was the head nurse in the emergency department. He got a nurse at the triage station to call for her. Kim rushed to where he was and smiled as soon as she saw him. Alex, what can I do for you? I need information. A young woman named Mia Lexington came in almost 3 hours ago. I want info on how she's doing. Kim's eyes studied him. He was still in his uniform. Are you on the clock? Alex debated for a moment if he should tell her he was still working or not. But he didn't want any more lies that could come back and bite him and hurt his career. No, Mia is my... Did he call her his girlfriend or just say she was a friend? He intended, if she was okay, to try the first one if she was willing. A friend. Oh, I get it. Wait here. I'll go see what I can find. Kim rushed off, and he stood at the triage waiting for her, praying she came back with some good news. 15 minutes later, Kim returned. She is one lucky girl. Alex cringed at the girl comment. She's in recovery. They stopped the swelling in her brain. But that's something they will keep an eye on, and the next 24 hours are critical. They fixed several breaks in her left leg. She's badly bruised and has quite a few stitches on various parts of her body from deep cuts. From what I gathered, she landed on her left side. I have to put you on her visitor list. The only way you can get information is if I put you down as her next of kin, her fiancé. He sighed in relief, only to wince as he realized what she said. But he supposed that worked for what he had to tell her next. She has a 4-year-old son. Well, It's good she'll pull through. Does she have parents or the father to look after the child? She will likely be in here for a while, and when she does go home, she'll need help as her left side, right up to her hip, is all cast. Alex shook his head. No, she doesn't have those. I'll be helping her out, and I'm sure my parents will too. Kim eyed him up and down. Are you sure? It's a lot of work. Did Kim think he couldn't handle the sick woman and a kid? I'm sure I can handle it. With a shrug, she turned and walked off. Good luck, she said over her shoulder. Great. He just became a temporary father and a fiancé. Everything hurt. Mia tried to swim through the fog that seemed to be clogging her brain. She couldn't open her eyes, and her body wouldn't move. She could hear quiet voices talking, and knew they were talking about her. One voice she vaguely knew. It was a voice that had been in quite a few of her fantasies, but surely Alex wouldn't be here right now when she was in so much pain. Cracking an eye open slowly, the blinding flashing fluorescent light came into view. Agonizing pain stabbing against her head, and she closed her eyes again on a groan. Crap! What happened to her? Taking a deep breath, she winced, and even that caused pain. She opened her eyes and gazed about the best she could. A white room with 2 boxes of flowers and get well cards. A dripping machine sat on one side, and that's when it became clear. She was in the hospital. Zane, where was her baby? Was he okay? Zane? She croaked out, clearing her dry throat. She repeated it loud as she could. Zane, my baby, is he okay? Alex's face came into view. He's fine. Actually, he's more than fine. My parents have brought him a whole new wardrobe and a bunch of toys. He's with my mother and father now. I thought it would be better than him being with me here. I think Mom and Dad have Olivia also, so he's having a ball. Mia stared stunned at Alex. He placed a glass of water with a straw before her mouth, and she took a soothing sip. Her throat felt instantly better. How did her son have all that he said? Why wasn't he close by screaming for her? And why was Alex here? What happened? How long have I been in here? You were in a car accident. You've been here for 4 days. This morning, they woke you from an induced coma. He pressed a button on the small call monitor. I just called the nurse to tell them you're awake. Okay. Everything he said made sense now. Why are you here? I'm your fiancé. What? She clutched her head as her shout rebounded. He ran his fingers through his hair. I'm your next of kin. I had to tell them that. Otherwise, I couldn't care for Zane or help you. Again, he made sense. She knew he wouldn't be able to be in there without a family connection, or if he wasn't on her next of kin list. Mia didn't know much about Alex, besides him being a cop, and from what she saw, a wonderful uncle. She knew with him being a cop, he should be safe for her child. She had her best friend Beth, and a couple of other girlfriends she could ask for help, but no one she could ask to look after Zane for a long time. Thanks. I don't know how I'll ever repay your kindness. I can't wait to meet your parents and tell them the same thing. Tears fell from her eyes as she realized what he and his family were doing for her. Leaning over, he gently brushed her tears away. You don't need to repay me. You getting better will make me happy and will be repayment enough. The nurse came in as Mia started bawling with gut-wrenching sobs. Don't worry, Mr. Douglas. She's overwhelmed. Go take a walk, and when you come back, I'm sure she'll be feeling better, the nurse said. Alex glanced at her. The guilt swamped her as she remembered her behavior at the cafe a couple of weeks ago. He nodded and walked out of her vision. Turning her gaze to the nurse, she watched as she smiled at her and put things into her drip. He has been so worried about you. When he hasn't been with your little one, he's been right here beside you. You're a lucky girl to have snagged Alex. There are quite a few of us here who are envious of you. The excruciating pain she was feeling seemed to float away from her the more the nurse spoke. Her eyes grew heavy and she couldn't keep them open. Giving up the fight, she flew away with the pain, closing her eyes and letting slumber take her. Mia came in and out of consciousness many times, and Alex warred with himself over what he'd done. Not only had he taken 3 weeks of personal leave, He'd taken over the care of Zane, Mia's son, moving the child into his home and making him an honorary Douglas. He'd lied to officials, even his own work, claiming that Mia was his fiancée. He'd signed paperwork affecting Mia's care and told everyone he would be looking after her when she got out of the hospital. His family had been amazing, helping him with Zane and sitting with Mia when he couldn't. He didn't like to leave her in the hospital by herself. He wanted someone with her when she awoke. Every time Mia had awakened, she'd asked about Zane and what happened. Alex wasn't sure if she forgot what had happened or if she just wanted to make sure it was the same. When he explained everything and told her where Zane was and what he'd been doing, she fell back asleep again. Mia stayed awake a little more each time she awoke. She always asked about her son first, making sure he was safe, before she asked about herself. The last time she awoke, Alex asked her if she would like for him to bring Zane in, as he was eager to see his mom. Mia had shaken her head and groaned. No, I don't want him to see me like this. I don't want to scare him. Wait until I don't have as many machines on and things attached to me, and I can stay awake longer than a half hour. Tell him I love him. He nodded and then got his mobile out. You can tell him. Mia, he needs to hear your voice. You're right. I should have at least thought of that. He smiled at her. I do that sometimes. Mia yawned. What? Be right. A smile graced her battered face, and even in her state, Alex thought she looked beautiful. He called his parents' house. Hello, Mom. Can you pass the phone to Zane? His mom wants to talk to him. Sure. I'm so happy she is up and ready to talk to him. The line went quiet, and Alex leaned over and held the phone to Mia's ear. Tears ran down Mia's cheek. Hi, baby. I hear you're being a super good boy. Mia chewed on her lip as she listened to Zane. It sounds like you're having so much fun at... She choked on a sob. Grandma and Grandpa's house. Yes, you were super lucky. Yeah, that is good that you saw Beth and Landon. She took a deep breath. I'm so proud of you. Oh, okay. I love you. I'll see you soon. Bye. Alex took the phone away and put it to his own ear to see if his mother or Zane were still there, but the line was dead. He put the mobile back in his pocket and looked at Mia. She was crying, and his heart ached. He hated it when she cried, because he had no idea what he could do to help her feel better. Clearing his dry throat, he reached for her hand and held it. You'll see him soon. As I'm sure you heard, he is being spoiled rotten. Mia sobbed harder, and he groaned. Had he said the wrong thing? I'm so sorry. Mia hiccuped. What are you apologizing for? You're amazing, and so is your family. If I wasn't in so much pain, I think I died and gone to heaven. I'm crying because when all this is done, my son is going to know what he's missing. I can't give him everything you have. She burst into tears again, and Alex had no idea what to do. He pressed the call button for the nurse, and when they came, he made a hasty exit. Alex called his mother back and asked what Zane had said to Mia and explained what happened. His mother sighed. I have no idea how I raised such clueless sons. Mia was upset because she thinks that once she gets better, we will be out of her life, and Zane won't have you or even us. As soon as his mother told him, he moaned at his own stupidity. How hadn't he figured that out? Well, I'll have to show her that won't happen. Mia was staying awake now for a decent amount of time. Most of the time, Alex was beside her when she awoke, either reading a book on his laptop or watching TV. He didn't say much, just sat quietly and watched over her. This time, when she awoke, was no different. Alex sat on the chair next to her bed reading a book. The last couple of days, she started talking to him about things other than her son. At first, she found out that he barely left her side. Once she'd eaten dinner and fell asleep, he went and got Zane from his parents and didn't come back until after breakfast, when he dropped Zane back off at his parents'. Mia slept from 6ish that night to 9:30 a.m. The drugs she was given were strong, and she knew that sleep helped her heal. She learned that Alex had a sister, Stephanie, who was close to her age. Mia hadn't known about Stephanie. She'd only seen the brothers as Stephanie hadn't taken Olivia swimming. Mia met Stephanie when she was still only waking for less than an hour at a time. Mia was a little intimidated by Stephanie at first. She was beautiful and definitely not shy. Oh, you're awake. Hi, I'm Stephanie, Alex's sister. Call me Steph, though. Mom and Dad are the only ones who call me Stephanie. So, how are you feeling? Want me to press for the nurse? I heard they're giving you the good drugs. Steph, hadn't given her the chance to answer before she reached over and pressed the nurse button. So, you're the girl who's going to put a stop to my older brother's bachelor days. I didn't believe it at first. I mean, Alex is almost 40 and hasn't found a woman. I see, even with your bruises, cast, and everything attached, how pretty you are. You also have the most adorable little boy. So, for Zane to be the amazing little guy he is, you must be pretty amazing yourself. I can see why my brother's attracted to you. It makes me wonder if the theory of why he hasn't found a woman is true. I just thought no woman would want to put up with him. She winked and paused as the nurse came in. Miss Lexington, how is your pain? 10 being excruciating and 1 not that bad. Not able to help herself, Mia looked at Steph, feeling like she might answer for her as Mia hadn't had the chance to talk since she awoke. Sure enough, Steph grinned her way. Oh, Mia was just telling me she was a 10. Poor thing. You better give her the good stuff. Mia opened her mouth to deny what Steph had said, but shut it when the nurse leaned over to check her head and brushed her left side. Shards of pain shot through Mia, and she moaned. The nurse pulled away quickly, and Mia caught a guilty look on her face before she quickly concealed it with a sympathetic one. I'm sorry. Let me go get you something for that pain. She rushed out of the room. Mia looked at Steph. Thanks, she rasped out, her throat dry from not talking much. Steph smiled. No problem. You're really brave. Mia shook her head, wincing at the throbbing pain it caused. I'm not. I'm so scared. Steph got out of her seat and came closer so she hovered over Mia. Don't be. The nurse came in, and Mia moved as she checked her name tags and then put some drugs into her drip. As she emptied the syringe, the nurse said, They should take effect soon. She checked the machines quickly before leaving the room again. Steph moved back into her line of vision. You have no reason to be scared. I've met one of your friends, Beth, and she is a great support. And you have us Douglases now. Even if you and my brother don't work out, I can already tell you and me are going to be really close. So, you'll always have a Douglas. She sighed. We're hard to get rid of. Mia chuckled and then groaned when that caused pain, too. She closed her eyes and let the drugs do their work. The next time she awoke, Alex was sitting where Steph had been. Turning her head so she could see him better, she smiled. Morning. He looked up from his book. Hi, how are you feeling today? Good. You're looking brighter. You have color in your cheeks. Adam's eyes held warmth as he smiled at her. Thanks. I think today I'm ready to start sorting things out. My head feels clearer, and I can't stop thinking about all the things that I have to do and have missed while I'm here. She reached up and massaged her temple. Everything ached, but she was strong, and it wasn't as bad as yesterday. Alex leaned in closer. It's only been 5 days. I've spoken to your work and tried to help you as best I could. Guilt weighed on her at all Alex had done for her and Zane. There was no way she'd be able to pay him and his family back. I know, and there is no way I'll ever be able to repay you all for what you've done for me. You've become my guardian angel. Alex shrugged. All I want from you is to get better. I'm glad I could help you in your time of need. I don't expect anything from you. Mia felt heat rise in her cheeks as he said he didn't expect anything from her. Was that true? She wondered why he'd taken her on as a responsibility and helped her with looking after Zane. Why did you do it? Do what? His gaze narrowed, his lips turned down, and he genuinely looked confused. Why did you lie and tell everyone I was your fiancé? Why did you help me? I mean, I wasn't exactly nice to you when I met you. He shrugged. I don't know. Bullshit, Mia muttered. She gasped, not believing she just said that to him. She may not have known Alex long, but she did know he wasn't the one to go into anything without a plan. He wasn't the type of man to not know what he was doing and why. She pierced him with her best glare, which probably wasn't very scary from a hospital bed. Alex ran his hand over his head before sighing loudly. There's something about you. From the first moment I laid eyes on you, I haven't been able to get you off my mind. You weren't like the other women. Even after our coffee, you didn't change. I became more intrigued. I looked into you and found out what I could. When I learned how young you are, I promptly stopped. The problem is, it didn't stop me from thinking about you." He gave a hollow laugh. "I know I sound like a dirty old man, but swear, I'm not that or stalker." Her heart was going a million miles an hour. She was surprised the monitors hadn't started going off. Mia could barely believe what Alex was saying. He was interested in her? Mia Lexington. She giggled at his dirty old man comment. Huh, she didn't think of him as that. God, he was anything but. "I know you're not any of those things," she said. "Huh, no you don't." He raised his eyebrow. "How old do you think I am?" 30, maximum 32. Mia felt heat rise on her cheeks. "I really hope I'm not insulting you." Alex gave a deep belly laugh. "Oh, you're good for my ego." He leaned closer and gathered her hand in his, rubbing circles below her knuckles. "I'm 39. I'll be 40 in a couple of weeks." "No way." She stared at him, gulping as she noted that when the Gene Fairy was giving out things to those being born, she gave Alex everything. He was pure male masculine beauty, with great olive skin, dark blue eyes, and big plump lips. This close, he looked even younger. She bet her last dollar he was one of those lucky men who just got better with age. "It's true. So now you know I'm way too old to be interested in you." He let her hand go. Maneuvering in the bed, careful of her cords and IV, she turned to him. "Say what? I'm confused. Why would you be interested in me? Not only am I a struggling single mother, I'm not exactly model material." "What does looking like a model have to do with me finding you attractive and wanting to date you?" "You want to date me?" Alex groaned. "Yes. Isn't that basically what this whole conversation has been about?" "Yes. No. I don't know. I'm confused now." A headache formed, and Mia rubbed her temple again. "How about we start again, Mia? Would you consider going on a date with me? I know we can't do it now with you in here, but we can spend this time getting to know one another." Mia chewed on her bottom lip and studied the man before her. Should she give him a chance? She obviously trusted him in some way, or she wouldn't let her son stay with him. Or let him speak with the doctors about her condition and sign things on her behalf, as if he were her next of kin. Could she trust him with her heart? The last person she let in left her pregnant and without a family. Her family, her parents, who were supposed to love her unconditionally, disowned her. Mia's own father wouldn't even look at her after she told him about Zane. "Get to know me while you're in here." Alex's eyes pleaded with her. "I promise, if you don't like what you learn, when you get out, I will leave you alone and won't bother you again." Zane would be devastated if she yanked him away from his newfound family. Alex had done so much for her. He deserved a chance. "Sure, but only if we agree to stay friends in the event that it doesn't work out." Alex smiled, and Mia swore her heart missed a beat. "Great. Now that we've talked about that, what did you want to sort out today?" "Lots of things. I need to ring Centerlink and explain the change in my work situation to see if I can get some help so I can pay some bills. I need to cancel daycare as I won't be working and can't afford it, and figure out a way to put speech therapy on hold until I have money again for that." "Your friend Beth told me about speech therapy. My parents have taken Zane and will take him again this week." "Oh, no, they can't do that." His brows furrowed. "Why?" "Well, I don't have money for it now, for starter. Second, that's a lot to ask of your parents." He shrugged. "It's no problem. They offered. And don't stress about money. We have you and Zane sorted." "No, I can't have you paying for things I haven't got money to pay you back for." He sighed and leaned forward. "We're not concerned about you paying us back. Look, let's worry about money and all that later. You concentrate on getting better first, and then we'll discuss all this again when you are." Glaring at him, she silently made a promise that she would do anything she could to pay back this amazing family. Giving up trying to win the glare out with Alex, she groaned in defeat. "Fine. Well, I also need to cancel swimming lessons. He's already missed 2 and he'll miss another this Friday. Zane hasn't missed any. He's been going. Alex's cheeks reddened. When I went to your apartment, I got him his swimmers along with some of his other things. Who's been taking him? Mia knew Alex hadn't because he had been at the hospital with her at least one of the times she remembered. Lucky is taking him, or Owen. Oh, that's just cruel. Huh? His eyes narrowed on her. Why is it cruel? They like Zane. He's a great kid. Zane loves swimming lessons. Mia giggled, and it felt so good. I know Zane loves swimming. It's cruel to the other children in the class. Between Olivia and Zane, with 2 Douglas men? She shook her head. Have any children drowned yet? Alex rolled his eyes. It's not that bad. Yes it is. You don't notice because you're focused on your niece. You and your brothers are... Closing her eyes, a vision of his brothers came up. Lockie with his cover model looks, and Owen with his thick, muscular body and blonde hair. Then there was Chad, the rugby star, with his athletic body and dimpled smiles. He was married and off the market, but he was still dream-worthy. Alex groaned, and she laughed at the sound. It was so manly. You better not be picturing my brothers now. Her giggle turned into a laugh, and her cheeks heated. She opened her eyes and smiled at Alex and winked at him. Now, why would I need to think about them when I have you here? They were slowly getting to know one another, and the more Alex learned about Mia, the more he liked her. She was a kind and caring person and always put her son first. She had a couple of close friends, and her best friend Beth, Mia would do anything for and helped out as much as she could. Alex entered Mia's hospital room, which she now shared with 2 other women. One had been in a similar situation as Mia, and the other was new, and he wasn't sure what she was in for. He had a surprise for Mia. He'd spoken with her doctor, and he'd given Alex permission to bring in some food. Mia had been eating solids for a couple of days now, and was starting to get her appetite back. Mia was sitting up in bed now, hooked up only to the IV. She had a cast on her left leg to mid-thigh, but the bandages on the rest of her body, except her head, were off. The hospital gown showed the bruises on her arms, and you could see the scrapes and yellow bruising on her face. She smiled as soon as she spotted him. He was late today, coming in at lunchtime and not as usual 9:30. You're here. Mia sounded just as happy to see him as he was to see her, and that had his heart soaring. He groaned, because as he thought that, he realized he sounded like the biggest pussy on the planet. What was this woman doing to him? Not only had he had an instant attraction to her, the more he was with her, the stronger his feelings got. The more he wanted to see her, spend time with her, and just be with her. He never felt this way about a woman. He was almost 40, and he never felt even half of what he had for Mia with anyone else. An uneasy feeling settled over him. He hoped he wasn't pushing Mia into something she didn't want. He hoped she felt something for him, and not just gratitude for him helping her out. Alex was already so invested, and he didn't want his heart broken. He didn't want her to feel any guilt by giving him a chance. Fuck, he sounded like a pussy. Setting the food on the bed table, he opened the container and got the spoons and forks out, placing them in the food. Alex handed hers to her, and then got his own and went to the chair beside her bed and sat, moving himself closer so they could talk. Waiting until she had taken a few bites, he lowered his voice so their conversation wouldn't be overheard by the other parents. I want you to know that if you want to be just friends, we can be. I don't want you to feel pressured by me and feel you have to give me a chance because I'm helping you. She paused with a spoonful of mashed potatoes to her mouth. Her eyes were wide, and her mouth hung open. Just because I'm older than you and a cop doesn't mean you have to keep spending time with me. If you want me to go, or you've had enough, just say so. I don't want to push you into something. She shut her mouth and then blinked. Mia put the spoon down in the container. I am grateful for everything you've done, not just for me, but for Zane. One thing I've learned through being a single mom, and even with this happening, is that I won't be pushed around and forced to do things I don't want to. She sighed. My parents wanted me to have an abortion. I stood my ground and said no. Then they wanted me to put Zane up for adoption. Again, I stuck up for what I wanted. She looked him straight in the eyes. I was a straight A student at the top of all my class. Well, not PE, but the rest, I was the top. I'm sure with my grades, I would have easily gotten into any university course I wanted. Once Zane starts school, I'll be back and finish my education. But I'm in no rush. I'm young, and I want to enjoy Zane. This path I chose. Just like I choose to spend time with you, to continue trusting you with me and my son. She turned a shade of pink, and her gaze moved from his. I've been attracted to you since the first time I saw you. I didn't think I ever really had a chance. Alex knew he was grinning like a loon, and he looked at Mia. The doubts he had moments ago vanished, and his respect for Mia built. He was proud of her. To be sure and comfortable with your choices took guts. You have more than a chance. I just wanted to make sure I wasn't taking advantage of you. Mia shook her head. Nope. I think it's the other way around. I'm taking advantage of you and your kindness. I mean, you haven't been going to work. I haven't gotten you in trouble, have I? You're a cop. I'm a detective. Now, why would you think you got me in trouble? I took 3 weeks leave. She shrugged. For missing work. She whispered, telling them I'm your fiancé when I'm not. I don't know. What else could you get in trouble for? Chuckling, Alex shook his head. You have nothing to worry about. I have my job. I have a week and a half left of leave. When that runs out, I have a bunch of holidays, sick leave, and so on that I've accumulated that I can take if I need. Smiling at her, he relaxed back against the seat. I barely take any time off. I don't. Or I should say, I didn't have a girlfriend or a family of my own, so I didn't really need it. I'm sorry you're spending your time in the hospital then. She frowned, causing her eyebrows to furrow. I'm not sorry. Well, I'm sorry you're in the hospital, but I'm happy that I'm spending time with you and Zane. He was enjoying getting to know Mia. He didn't regret any of the time he spent with her. Mia was so sick of being in the hospital. She'd been in for over 2 weeks and was going out of her mind. Granted, her first week she slept and done some much-needed recuperating. The second week, as she slowly got better, she saw her son and heard all about his exploits. She admitted that it hurt seeing him and knowing he was having so much fun he barely missed her. He just left, and she'd broken down crying. Sweetheart, why are you upset? I thought you'd be happy to see Zane. Alex wiped her tears and placed a kiss on her cheek. I am happy, she hiccuped. I'm just being selfish. You? Selfish? No, I don't believe it. Tell me what's wrong. Zane doesn't even miss me. This is the longest we've been apart since he was born, and he didn't even seem fazed when he saw me. I've been so worried about him, and he doesn't even care if I'm around. He's having too much fun to miss me. Oh, Mia, you're not selfish. We've all been keeping Zane busy so he isn't upset over not being with you. Trust me when I say that when he winds down, you're all he talks about. Alex smiled at her. Did you know, I don't read stories as good as you. Something about me not changing voices. Well, I can't do a girl one, Zane says. Alex chuckled. Oh, and I dress him wrong. I had no idea there was an order. My mother says that she is told she doesn't make ham and cheesy sandwich as good as you, or mashed potatoes. Those are just the things I can think of now. The heavy weight on her chest from missing and worrying over her son lifted. Thank you. Alex surprised her when he brushed a gentle kiss over her lips. He hadn't kissed her before, and she held her breath and her stomach fluttered with butterflies as his lips touched hers. Any time, sweetheart. Mia loved it each time he used his endearment for her. He was so good to her, and Mia was starting to feel like the luckiest woman to have him in her life. I should have asked you this weeks ago. I was just being selfish, thinking and worrying about myself and Zane. How much time have you got off work? Alex shrugged. I took 3 weeks so far. I have a bunch of holiday and leave banked up. If I needed more, I'm sure I could get it. You should be getting out in the next couple of days, though. So, we'll see how that goes when you get home. You're amazing. I feel bad that you spent your hard-earned holidays looking after me and my son. He leaned forward on his seat and brushed the pads of his fingers over her cheek. I don't regret it, so don't feel bad. If not for you, I probably wouldn't have taken the time off. I have enjoyed the time I've spent with you and Zane. There has to be stuff you've missed that you can't do because of me and Zane. I know you miss one of Chad's home games. I'm so sorry. Don't be. That was the day I learned your favorite color is orange, and you loved peach roses. That you loved to dance, and before you were pregnant, you went to ballroom dancing lessons. If you didn't have Zane, you would have gone to university to study English and become an editor for a publisher. You put your life on hold for Zane. He stroked her cheeks, and she basked in his touch. I love Zane more than any of those things. Alex brushed his lips over hers, making her stomach do flip-flops at just that simple touch. I know, and that's one of the things I like about you. She smiled up at him. It was a great day. I learned so much about you. Not just that your favorite color is blue and that you always wanted to be a cop and put away bad guys, but that you worked at your dad's construction company from a teenager until you joined the force. That you were one of the youngest men to make detective in your precinct and worked hard to prove they made the right choice. Mia grabbed his hand and brought it to her mouth, kissing his knuckles. I have to say that Zane's recount of the game was probably better than watching it. Alex chuckled. I don't know about that, but he was super cute, especially when he demonstrated the tackles and made all the noises of every score and hit. You know, it's not just me who has fallen in love with him. My family adores him. Mia's heart soared. Right now, she felt so lucky that her son had found love and a family to make theirs bigger. He adores you. Gripping his hand, she sighed. No matter what happens between us, promise me you'll always be Zane's friend. You don't even have to ask. He's already a part of my family, and nothing can change that. Closing her eyes to stop tears escaping, she whispered, Thank you. Mia had spent the last couple of days catching up on the latest gossip in magazines and watching movies on the portable DVD player Alex had brought to the hospital. She missed her e-reader, but felt rude asking Alex to go to her house and search for it. The problem was, Mia wasn't one for sitting down and relaxing. She was used to being on the go from morning till a couple of hours before bedtime when she put Zane to bed and read. She was bored out of her mind. Alex tried to keep her company, but she was starting to get snappy. The doctor should be arriving soon, and she prayed he would give her the okay to go home. Mia was going to beg him if she had to. She couldn't be in the hospital another minute and stay sane. She'd been in for almost 3 weeks. Mia was grateful she lived in Australia and medical care was free, or she'd hate to think of how much she'd be in debt. She knew, with a head injury and all the trauma her body went through, the hospital wanted to keep her to make sure she was well enough to function. Most of the monitors had been disconnected almost a week ago, and her drip had been taken out 5 days ago. Mia had even had 4 showers with a garbage bag over her leg and taped it so her cast didn't get wet. It had been so good. She hated the sponge baths. Mia wanted to get home and be with Zane. She'd never gone this long without him. Even though she talked to him and saw him every day, it was different from what she was used to. Alex came into her room. He arrived later today than usual. She stood, using the crutches she was trying to get used to. Shouldn't you be saving your energy to show the doctor how well you're doing so you can go home? He raised his eyebrow at her. I should, but I can't lie on that hard bed a minute longer. You do know, I suspect if the doctor does let you go free, he won't want you exhausting yourself hobbling around everywhere. I know. I swear, I'll just be glad to see more than these 4 walls. I was Dr. Ramus, her head doctor, an older gentleman in his late 60s with short white hair, walked into the room, cutting off what she was about to say. Ah, I see you're up and raring to go. The nurses told me you were eager to leave this place. Am I ever? Mia nodded. Dr. Ramus smiled. Well, I have some good news. You may go as long as your fiancé here promises to look after you. I will, Alex said. Great. Dr. Ramus smiled at Alex, then turned back to her. Please, be mindful. You were in a car crash, and your body still needs time to recuperate. So, no overdoing it. In 4.5 weeks, I expect to see you in my office. He handed Alex an envelope. she assumed was her discharge and would have his office numbers on it. At that time, we'll remove the cast and do an all-around checkup. All the information you need is in the envelope I have given your fiancé. If you have any question, or having headaches or any problems, please call the numbers listed. Mia wanted to jump up and down with her excitement that she was getting out of the hospital. She grinned at the doctor and nodded. Thanks so much for all your care. Good luck, Miss Lexington. I'll go make sure the nurses know you're leaving. You will be wheelchaired out of the hospital by a nurse and taken to your vehicle. Oh, okay. Thanks. I'll help get Mia organized. When a nurse is ready, I'll go get my car and drive it around to the front, Alex said. The doctor nodded before he walked out of the room. Mia knew she was grinning like a loon as she gazed at Alex. I'm free. He chuckled. Yes, you are, sweetheart. Now, before we leave, I need to tell you that I think it's best if you come stay with me. My house is big enough, and Zane already has his own room. I can help you get around and look after you. I don't know. That's a huge step. You've already put up with me for close to 3 weeks. I like being with you. You'll have your own room. Your flat is so small, and there's one big problem. There's no elevator, only stairs. I haven't been too bad to put up with, have I? No, you're fantastic. I've already put you out so much. She groaned. I feel like I'm taking advantage of you. He laughed. Oh, I'm a big boy. You're not taking advantage of me. I wouldn't offer if I didn't want you there. Okay, I'll live with you while I get better. Mia gave in. It seemed she couldn't deny Alex. Chapter 3. Nervous energy spread through Alex as he waited by the car at the front entrance of the hospital. A nurse wheeled Mia to the car. Mia eased herself into the passenger seat. He'd placed the seat back so she could fit her cast-covered leg in it. What would Mia think when she saw his house? Would she like it? He'd bought a house a couple of streets away from his parents because he liked the neighborhood. It was the one he grew up in, and he knew it was safe. His house backed onto a reserve. It was a 3-story house, 2 garages, and a rumpus on the bottom floor. The second floor held the kitchen, dining room, family room, with a veranda off it, a bathroom, and the lounge room. The top floor had 5 bedrooms, one with an ensuite. The bathroom upstairs sat between the smallest and the second largest bedroom. Alex had given Zane the big room next to the bathroom. The hospital was only a 5-minute drive from his house. I'm excited to see Zane. I thought it best Zane stay at my parents' house tonight, so you have at least one night to get settled before he comes back. But I can ring up and cancel if it means that much to you. Mia sighed and gazed out the window. No, you're right. I suppose one more night without him won't hurt. As he turned toward the estate he lived in, he thought about his house. I know I said you should stay with me because your apartment is up so many flights of stairs and there is no elevator. My house is 3 stories, but before you say anything, I want to tell you that with me being home, I can carry you up and down the stairs. Really, you'll only need the top and middle floors anyway. He glanced over at her to see her staring at him wide-eyed. You're full of surprises, she muttered. He turned down his street and drove to the very end of the cul-de-sac. He pulled into his driveway, pushed the remote to open the garage, and drove the car inside it. Wow, this is a nice place, Mia said as she gazed at his house. Alex parked the car and turned to Mia. Stay. He got out, going to the door connecting to the house. He opened it, placing his keys on the rack, and sat the doorstep under it to keep it open. He went back to the car, stopping Mia, who was struggling to get out. I thought I told you to stay. She stared up at him with big brown eyes that shone with annoyance. I'm not a dog. You don't get to just say, stay, and expect me to listen. Oh, he did. Alex wasn't used to having his orders disobeyed. I do. Mia laughed like he just told her the world's funniest joke. Huh. Well, you're in for a shock. The little minx wiggled herself more out of the car before using the frame to lift herself up. Sighing, he picked her up, cradling her in his arms. He carried her through the open door and went up the stairs. Hey! She bashed him on the chest. I could have at least walked with the crutches to the stairs. He shrugged. It's safer this way, and you're supposed to be resting. Alex sat her on the sofa in the lounge room. He walked back down the stairs and got her bag and crutches out of the car. He took them upstairs, placing them by the stairs to the upper level before going back down and shutting the adjoining garage door. He came back up, grabbed the crutches, and placed them beside Mia, then sat on a recliner next to her. She looked good in his home. Alex had never brought a woman to his house. It hadn't felt right. This was his space, and he didn't want just anyone invading it. Mia felt right in his home, though. She felt right with him. He knew now, as she sat looking around the lounge room, that she was special to him. He never felt so drawn to a woman. Things had never felt so right. With Mia, he could just sit and be. He didn't have to entertain her or talk. And she didn't talk nonstop like she felt the need to fill the silence. Alex thought it was important to be with someone who you could just be with. That you didn't have to go out to the movies, dinner, the park, and so on. Someone you could just sit and talk to or relax with and enjoy life. With Mia, he had that. With her being in the hospital, they hadn't been able to do all the usual dating things, but had enjoyed each other's company. His parents and grandparents, as far back as he could remember, had all married the loves of their lives. And Alex remembered his granddad saying to him, "You'll know the woman is right. Not only will she be all you think about, she will be the woman you can just sit with in the quiet and enjoying just being with each other." Alex was almost 40, and he hadn't had any of the symptoms his grandfather or father spoke of. His brother Chad had found a love of his life. Alex had fucked around, but never settled down with anyone. He'd had friends with benefit, but never a relationship. Cups must earn more than I thought. Her voice had him giving himself a mental shake, and he turned to face her. They don't. Owen, my brother, he took over the family construction business. He turned it around to be quite profitable. Chad helped, and once he got some of his league friends to help with ads and other things, the business grew. Chad and Lockie sold their share to Owen and me years ago. Owen does have a larger share, but he deserves it. He does all the work. Oh, well, from what I've seen, your house is lovely. She wiggled back on the sofa, and he stood to help. No, sit. You've done so much to help. Relax. I'm fine right here for a while if you turn the TV on. Reaching over for the remotes on the coffee table, he sat them on her lap. This one is the cable. The other is for volume. She nodded her understanding. Do you want some water, snacks, or both? No, I'm fine. Really. Sit, or go do something. I'm sure with you looking after Zane and me, you've gotten nothing done on your vacation. You spent your first 2.5, almost 3 weeks in the hospital when you weren't with my son. Alex sat back down on the recliner. Her bruises had healed. She still had some slight yellow to some of the ones that were really bad. She'd been given crutches to use, but with her leg in a cast, Alex was worried if he left, she'd hurt herself further, trying to do something she wasn't supposed to do. One thing he learned was that she wasn't the type of person that sat around. She wasn't one to sit idle. I'll sit here and watch TV with you, he said. He chuckled when Mia huffed. He knew then that she wouldn't have sat still. She would have found a way to get around as soon as he left the room. Mia turned the TV on, but after an hour of flipping through the channels, she sighed. Can we go get my son back? He grinned as she made it sound like his mother was holding Zane hostage. I told you. Zane is staying the night. I really think it would be best for you to get settled here first before he's here with you like this. She groaned and closed her eyes. I'm not a TV person. I don't have time for it with work and Zane. When I get free time, I usually read. Her lip pouted out. I miss my e-reader. Shaking his head, he smiled at her. Why didn't you tell me to pick it up for you when I dropped by your house to grab everything you needed? I can't remember where I put it. I'm grateful your sister went with you so you didn't have to go through my drawers. I couldn't ask you to waste time searching for it. You and your family have already done so much for me. She sighed again really loudly. I can go without my e-reader. How about if we go for a drive to your apartment and you can help me look? There was no way he would allow her to search. He wasn't risking her hurting herself, but he knew if he said he would do it all, she would say no. Her eyes grew wide and a megawatt smile spread over her face. Sure, I'm ready when you are. Alex jumped up and picked her up when she tried to get herself off the sofa. Her arms came around his neck. First, he walked her to her bag to get the keys for her apartment. and then he carried her down to his car. The whole time she was in his arms, he reminded his body she was hurt, and now wasn't the time to awaken with need for her. The problem was, it wasn't listening. His cock was straining against its restraints, and her sweet lavender smell was fogging his brain. When he placed her in the car, he shut the passenger door and took a deep breath before going to his side. The next couple of weeks were going to be long. They'd been at her apartment for over half an hour. Alex had looked in the lounge room for her e-reader and hadn't found it. She'd sat in a chair and watched as he dug in the sofa and looked under things and behind everything. The whole time Mia had sat watching, drooling, trying not to act like a woman in heat at the sight before her. His muscles bunched and flexed as he lifted things, and she'd lost count of how many times she'd licked her lips when he bent over and his tight, rounded ass was in the air. If she didn't have her leg in a cast, she told herself she would have jumped him, but she knew she wasn't that type. Oh well, she could still fantasize. She now lay on her bed as she watched him search her room. Mia wiggled on the bed and peered down, squeezing her legs together when he moved her bedside drawers and bent down. Alex came up smiling. "I found it." She smiled at him and leaned forward, wrapping her arms around him. She kissed both his cheeks before brushing her lips over his. Alex froze beneath her touch, and she groaned as she realized she'd just thrown herself at the man. Easing away, she felt her whole face heat up. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have done—" Alex didn't let her finish. He moaned and pasted his mouth against hers. His tongue sought hers, and together they tangled and tasted one another. Her body hummed, and her mind screamed, "What the hell has come over you?" Oh, she knew she'd been watching him with his ass in the air, and her body lit up like she'd never felt before. Without a thought for her broken leg, she spread her thighs apart and pulled Alex onto the bed until he settled between her legs. Her dress hiked up high. Thank God she'd worn a dress. An all-consuming lust filled her like she never felt before. All she knew was she needed Alex. She yanked his shirt up, feeling the ridges of his abs and pulling her mouth from his. "Off. I need to see you." She was so desperate to see him. She'd seen him with no shirt on at swimming, but never this close, and she'd never touched him. Alex stared down at her, his blue eyes darkening with lust. "Please," she begged. The last time she begged, she had been to her parents, asking them not to kick her out. She hoped Alex wouldn't turn her down, too. Mia needed this. She'd only slept with one person in her whole life, and it had been painful and finished within minutes. She wanted to try again, and this time with someone more experienced. A man, not a boy. We shouldn't," Alex whispered. Reaching up, she stroked his cheek. "Please, I need this. You make me feel beautiful. Tell me you don't want me." Swearing, he lifted his shirt over his head. Mia marveled at his perfect six-pack abs and tattooed covered chest. Hesitantly, at first, she touched each tat, tracing the patterns. He came back down between her legs. "No, please, I want to see all of you." She felt the heat on her cheeks rise and spread through her. She chewed on her lip and stared at him, pleading. "Fuck. I'm going to hell." Alex eased off the bed, stood, and dropped his jeans. Wow. He went commando. His long, thick cock sprang up, and she wiggled on the bed as tingles shot straight to her pussy, which pulsed at the sight of him. "Oh, you're way more perfect than I dreamed. I mean," she pointed to his chest and other places. "Who knew that could look so good?" Alex grunted, and she noticed a red tinge on his cheeks. Oh, she was embarrassing him. Slowly, he climbed back on the bed. When he hovered over her, his lips came down to nestle in her neck before he nibbled his way down and along her collarbone. The summer dress felt heavy, and she knew it needed to come off. Clutching him to her, she used his arms to help lift herself up. "I want this dress off." She let go of him and gripped him with one hand as he used the other to lift the dress hem that was bunched at her thighs. Alex looked in her eyes. Once we do this, I can't go back. I won't go back. Are you ready for that, Mia? Mia didn't know if she was ready. All she knew was she wanted Alex more than she'd ever wanted anything. Mia wasn't usually one to get what she wanted, but this time she sure was going to try. She nodded, and on a groan, he helped her pull the dress over her head. She sat before him in her underwear. Alex reached behind her and undid her bra clasp, and then stared down at her panties. Are they a favorite? No. Good, because I don't want to hurt you by moving your plastered leg. Frowning, it took her a moment to realize what he'd said. She'd completely forgotten about her leg. She was so eager for him. Alex grabbed the side of her panties and ripped. Then he repeated it with the other side. Exposed now, she felt the heat cover her whole body. She'd never been naked before a man before. Zane's father hadn't even seen her nude. She kept her shirt on, and her skirt had been flung up and her panties pulled down. Mia was a big girl, and Zane's father had only had sex with her as a bet. She learned that when he laughed at her when she told him she was pregnant. Her lust diminished as memories she tried hard to forget resurfaced. Mia hugged her stomach, hiding the stretch marks from Alex's penetrating gaze. What had she been thinking? She couldn't do this. She couldn't let another male into her life. She couldn't be with another man. Don't. Alex tilted her head up to gaze at him. The steel in his voice came through. You're beautiful. I have envisioned you like this from the first time I saw you. Chewing on her bottom lip, she slowly lowered her arms. I wanted you too. No, you didn't. He chuckled. I heard you telling your friend that men like me were too hyped up on steroids and image conscious to go out with a woman bigger than a size 8. You said a woman like you didn't have a chance because not only did you have a kid, but you had an ass, real breasts, and a stomach because you eat. Crap. You heard that? How? Yeah. The men's change room is right next to the women's, and the walls are paper thin. He shook his head. I was intrigued. He winked. I wanted to find out what a real woman felt like. Mortified, she pulled him down to her and buried her head against him. I'm changing my mind about you the more I learn. Oh, yeah. What do you think of me now? No. I'm not getting caught again. I bet I can get it out of you. He hovered over her lips and brushed his mouth against hers before he nibbled on her lips, sending jolts straight to her pussy. You can try, she whispered on a breathless pant. Alex's fingers ran down her body, resting to cup her breasts and tweak her nipples. Shots of delight pulsed through her, and she basked in his touch. Letting her own fingers explore, she traced the ridges in his back before coming around and trailing the pads over every crevice and bump. Mia loved the feel of his body. Zane's father hadn't been built like Alex. He'd been all tall and skinny with scruffy hair and brown eyes. Mia sighed in pure bliss as he flexed and her fingers smoothed over his abs. She'd seen pictures of hot bodies but never had the pleasure of feeling one. Alex looked after himself. He was older than her, and she knew he worried about their age difference. But she didn't care how old he was. He was hers, in this moment now. The kiss deepened. Alex ravaged her mouth, and she matched him, tangling her tongue with his and moving her lips to copy his rhythm. Alex's body sank further down, and he rubbed against her, circling her arms around him. She ran her hands up and down his back as she eased her legs further apart. His mouth tore from hers on a groan, and she panted for breath. He rested his face into her neck and sucked on her skin. When he came up to her ears, his tongue snaked out and licked before he nibbled on the tip. Holy shit! Sparks fluttered down her and stopped fluttering at her core. Alex teased further down, his hot breath feathering over her puckered nipples. She took deep breaths in, her body shaking as he sucked one pebbled nipple in before repeating it with the other. Bringing her hands up, she gripped his hair, holding him against her skin that now burned with need for more. He slid 2 fingers into her core and moaned against her. His fingers eased out, and he lined his cock up, spreading her pussy lips, and sat the tip at her entrance. His head came up from her breast, and his gaze caught hers. Are you sure? She nodded and gasped as he slowly moved into her. His hands rested on either side of her, balancing him. The feeling was different from what she remembered. She knew the first time was supposed to hurt, but she didn't know it could feel like this, like her body was on fire, like a coil was sprung tight and it was getting ready to unravel. Alex eased further into her, and she felt a slight sting from the stretching, but it didn't feel bad. She looked into his beautiful blue eyes and focused on the new sensation flowing through her. Her body felt light, but full and ready to burst. When he moved out and pushed back in again, she relaxed further as tingles of pleasure shot through her. Staring at Alex, she watched as his muscles strained and tensed with each retreating in her. When he was fully seated in her, she wiggled her butt, enjoying the blissful feeling. Running her hands over his chest and back, she let the immense ecstasy wash over her as he started to thrust in and out of her, setting a steady pace. Closing her eyes, she basked in the bubbling and need building within her. She was so close to falling over the edge. Each stroke of Alex's cock had her rising higher and higher. Gripping Alex's shoulders, she tried to move as best she could with her leg cast. Alex groaned. Don't hurt yourself. I need... She could barely breathe as she searched for her release. It was so close. I need... Grunting, Alex leaned down, resting his hands above her head as he nibbled on her earlobe, sending pulses straight to her pussy and shattering her into a million pieces. Holding him close to her, she let euphoria wash over her. Nothing had felt like this before, not even when she pleasured herself. She was in heaven. Alex pumped into her with a final deep push before yelling his release and resting on her. She enjoyed his weight, adding to her already happy state. Alex slowly moved off her. Fucking hell. I'm sorry, sweetheart. I forgot a condom. I've never forgotten one before. I'm clean and on the pill, she mumbled, closing her eyes, too tired and sated to care. She knew she should, especially after how Zane was conceived, but right now, she felt too good. He kissed her cheek. I'm clean. I was tested only a couple of weeks ago. I haven't been with anyone for a while, and when I have been, I've always used a condom, even when they've said they're on the pill. Opening one eye, she glared at him. You don't believe me? Yes, of course I do. I just don't want you to think someone my age wouldn't know better. She closed her eyes and shrugged. I should have learned my lesson. I forgot too, so it's not your fault. I am on the pill. It's implanted in my arm. It helps to regulate my periods. I promise. I'm not trying to trap you. Shit, that's not what I think. I know you wouldn't do that. He sighed and lay back down to snuggle into her. I'm the one who started this. I didn't want you to think less of me for not being prepared. I'm old enough to know better. Smiling, she hugged him. I started it. I kissed you. I don't think less of you. I think very big of you. Thank you. What are you thanking me for? Everything. I'm feeling very lucky right now. You make me happy. Good. I always want to make you happy. Content, she let sleep claim her. Mia awoke to her breast being squeezed and her nipples being plucked. Alex's cock rubbed up against her pussy lips. She opened her eyes and took a deep breath as he held her tighter from behind, and his cock slammed home. His head buried into her shoulder, and he nibbled on her bare skin. Mia screamed in pure pleasure as Alex's dick hit just the right spot, and he hammered into her. Reaching out, she gripped the bedside table with one hand and the sheets with the other, moaning as he thrust into her over and over. Alex sucked on her neck like a hungry animal, and she felt her whole body go from a burning simmer to a blazing fire. Alex was driving her mad. His hands tightened on her, and the slight bit of pain added to her already building pleasure. The drive of each of his thrusts had her grip tightening on her anchors as her body moved with the force of each slam into her. He'd been sucking on her neck, and it throbbed, building her desire. Alex started nibbling on her ear, pausing to growl. You're so damn tight. Before he bit the tip of her earlobe, shards of ecstasy shot straight through her, settling at her core as he pistoned into it. Alex was pounding into her, and she was loving every minute of it. His hand came down, stroking her clit. Oh, God, I'm gonna come. She was so close. Mia could feel his muscles straining against her, and she knew he was close when she felt them tense up. Alex's teeth scraped over her earlobe before tugging it. You're mine. His whispered words of possession had her falling over the edge and crashing into rapture. Alex pushed into her, holding himself so he was as deep as he could be before grunting and yelling his release. Alex held her to him, and they both panted together, basking in their euphoria. What had gotten into Alex? Whatever it was, she liked it. Alex couldn't believe how he just treated Mia. He'd been like a crazed animal. Alex had awakened from a nap to the feel of her body against him, her ass nestled into his crotch. His cock had been painfully hard. At first, he just basked in the feeling of her naked body against him. Her hands clutched at his arms. In that moment, he knew he'd never let her go. He'd been alone for way too long and planned on never being without her. Even with her being in the hospital, spending these last few weeks with her had been great. Alex thought he was happy before he met Mia. He thought he was content with being a bachelor, to never have children or a wife to care for. He was wrong. Alex didn't want to go back to the bleak existence he had before. He held Mia tighter, and she moaned in her sleep, and that simple sound had him pouncing on her. Are you all right? I didn't hurt you, did I? Damn, he shouldn't have been so rough. No, I feel great. He chuckled and kissed her head. Easing up, he looked down at her. Her strawberry blonde hair lay out around her on the pillow. Her eyes were half closed, her lips full and puffy. He winced when he saw her neck. He'd never before marked a woman, or left her with hickeys like he'd given Mia. The love bites that covered her neck would tell everyone she was taken. Alex wasn't usually a possessive man, but with Mia, he was almost a caveman. The only thing that set him apart from them was he hadn't thrown her over his shoulder and yelled, "Mine!" He slid off the bed and glanced at the clock. It was late, almost dinner time. We should gather the things you want and leave. It's pretty late. Are you hungry? Mia groaned and stretched her arm up. His gaze honed in on her large breast as they rose and fell. Scrubbing his hands over his face, he averted his eyes and looked for his clothes. He knew if he kept watching her, his cock that was rising and his blood that was starting to simmer would have him taking her again. How late is it? I am pretty hungry. He looked at her to see her sitting up and moving to the edge of the bed. It's 7. By the time we get what you need and leave, it'll be 7:30, or close, I reckon. That explains why I'm hungry. I eat dinner with Zane at 6, and at the hospital, they brought our meals at 5:30. We missed lunch, too. She threw his jeans in his direction. Putting on his jeans, he gathered his other clothes. Once he was dressed, he helped her get dressed and find the items she wanted to take with her. I'm going to buy us some takeout food. What do you feel like? He asked. We passed quite a few options on the way from your house. McDonald. I think this Macca's should be better than our first. Alex winked at her as he flung her now packed backpack over his shoulder. Yeah, this time, you won't have to pretend you're not watching me. I was not. Alex opened her apartment door, and she hobbled to him. He closed the door, making sure it was locked, then leaned down and picked her up, cradling her in his arms and laying her crutches across her. She smiled up at him, and he could see how happy she was. He was right. It took them a good half hour to get dressed and finish getting what she needed from her place before they sat in his car on their way to get food and go back to his house. Chapter 4. Mia hadn't stayed in the guest bedroom Alex had assigned her. When they got home, she had every intention of eating, then maybe watching a movie or reading. But Alex was just so sexy. Mia had never gotten to enjoy her sexuality, and being with Alex was not only amazing, it was exhilarating. She told herself to have fun for once. Alex was old enough that he wasn't scared of responsibility. And she was on the pill, and a consenting adult. If Zane was around, she knew she wouldn't be acting so reckless. Mia tested her feelings as she opened her eyes and stared at Alex's muscular chest. Did she regret what she'd done with him? No. He made her feel so many things, like lust, passion, and pleasure. But right now, none was regret. Since meeting him, he treated her with respect and care. He was amazing with her son. And even knowing him for such short time, she knew he would do anything for her. That wasn't all, though. He made her feel beautiful. She got tingles, and her stomach was full of butterflies just from being close to him. It was more than she could ever hope to feel for a man. Morning, sweetheart. His deep, rumbly voice was so sexy. Easing away from him, she wiggled up to her pillow. Morning. Do you want the bathroom, or can I take it first? You can use my ensuite. I'll use the other one down the hall. He sat up, and Mia felt heat rise on her cheeks as her gaze went straight to his abs and over his tattooed arms. He was a masterpiece, and with so many tats, she could never picture him for a cop. I'll be right back. I'm just going to go get one of the large bags for your leg and the tape. He got off the bed naked, and she couldn't help the giggle that escaped as his ass flashed her. Wow, he was perfect everywhere. Mia hadn't known she was an ass woman, but damn, Alex had buns of steel. He didn't seem to care that he was buck-ass naked as he left the room. Moving up to a sitting position and using her cast leg with its heaviness, she swung it around and shuffled her other leg to meet it. Then slid to the edge of the bed, ready for Alex. He came in with the items and knelt before her like some knight as he placed the waterproof bag over her cast and used the tape to seal it on. Standing, he picked her up and carried her to the bathroom, sitting her on the toilet seat. He set the shower up and then helped her in. One of her hands gripped the soap holder and the other held his arm as she got her balance. Do you need me to stay? She bit her lips to hold her laughter in. He sounded so serious. I'll go get your toiletry bag and a towel, but when I get back I can help. He raised his eyebrow, and she couldn't hold it in and cracked up laughing. Oh, I have no doubt you could help, but I think I can handle showering myself. I'll yell if I need you. He smirked, nodded, and placed her hand on the wall to help balance her. Be right back. He left, and this time she didn't feel as bad when she focused on his ass. When he was out of sight, she dunked herself under the water, enjoying the warmth on muscles she didn't even know could ache. But it was a good ache because it reminded her of the wild night she'd had. Alex was insatiable. When they'd arrived back at his house, he carried her up the stairs. And when he went up the second flight and didn't even get winded, she kissed him, and he changed direction and placed her on the bed in the in-bedroom. She caught a glimpse of the room when he sat her down before taking her mouth again. And she knew he'd taken her to his room because his clothes were on the floor and his watch and chain sat on the bedside table. Alex made love to her, and then, later in the night, awoken her to fuck her. Mia was one satisfied woman. She didn't even know she could orgasm as much as she had. She closed her eyes and dunked her head under the water. I have everything here. I'm sitting the towel in the bathroom vanity. Opening her eyes, she looked at Alex. He smiled and handed her the toiletry bag. Thanks. Give me a good 15. I want to wash my hair, and then you can come back and help me? Sure. He leaned in and kissed her, and Mia hoped that they worked out, because so far she was really enjoying having a boyfriend. Alex had never walked into his parents' house with a woman. Not that his mother hadn't asked him to bring a girlfriend, he just never had. But Mia was different. He knew, even if they weren't there to pick her son up, he'd still be bringing her around to meet his parents. Mom, we're here, he yelled as he slammed the door. Mommy! A hurricane of blonde hair and energy came running toward them, and before he had a chance to knock his target over, Alex grabbed him. Hey, buddy. He held Zane as he wiggled in his arms, eager to get to his mom. Remember yesterday before I dropped you off at Grandma and Grandpa's, that I told you, when your mom gets home, we have to be super careful with her? Zane nodded, but Alex had a feeling he didn't understand. Hey, baby. Mommy missed you so much. But Mommy has ouches. so you have to be very careful. Can you be super careful?" Zane nodded. "Uh-huh, but guess what?" Mia chuckled. "What, baby?" "Isa got a room here now. It has trucks on the wall, and Uncle Owens said he'd take me if you said yes to see some real trucks. How cool, Mom! Hey, you'll say yes. I just know she will." His big eyes widened, and Alex walked slowly toward the lounge room so Mia could sit down. "Yous knows what one of the bestest thing is, Mom? I got a Skylander bedspread." He was so excited he was practically screaming. Alex glanced at Mia, and her smile and light in her eyes as she stared at her son was breathtaking. She was gorgeous. "Baby, you've been super spoiled." Alex couldn't help but chuckle when Zane nodded. "Yeah, I have. Grandma and Grandpa has been real good. I love them." Tears slipped down Mia's cheeks, and she sniffled. "Zane, how about we go get your mommy the cookies we baked while Alex helps your mom get settled?" His mother took Zane from his arms. He hadn't even heard her walk down the hall because he was so focused on Mia. Alex loved his parents and knew how lucky he was to have them. He knew his parents would come to love Mia, just like they did Lana, Chad's wife. Mia was overwhelmed. Her life right now felt like a dream. If it was, she never wanted to wake up. This amazing family had taken her and Zane in and treated them as if they were their own. They'd made a room for her son and looked after him as if he was their flesh and blood. The light in her son's eyes as he spoke of Alex's parents as Grandma and Grandpa was blinding. Zane was so happy. He was usually an easygoing, happy little boy, but the joy and happiness she'd just seen in his eyes was like nothing she'd ever seen before. It filled her heart to almost bursting, and Mia knew she could never repay the Douglases for their kindness and all they had given her. Nothing had been this perfect ever. "I don't know how I'm going to repay you and your family," she sobbed. "Hey, no crying." Alex gathered her to him on the sofa, embracing her in a hug that had her melting against him. "You don't need to repay me or my family. We haven't done anything special." Yes, you have. Without you and your family, I don't know what I would have done these last couple of weeks." Pushing against Alex's chest, she eased back and stared up at him. "You have all been like guardian angels to me. And you, Alex, have been more of a father to Zane than any other man in his life. Thank you. I know thank you is nowhere near enough for what you and your family have done for me and my son. But I'll say it to you every day if it'll help." The sound of sniffling to her left had Mia glancing over to see Alex's mother, Catherine, standing there with tears rolling down her cheeks. "Oh, sweetie, you have nothing to thank us for. Zane is a blessing, and you are a welcome new member to our family. There is no need to thank us." Catherine walked further into the lounge room and came over, leaned down, and hugged Mia tight. After a good couple of minutes or so, Catherine patted her back and eased away, standing. "Enough crying now, love. Let's go into the kitchen to eat some of those cookies your son helped me make, and then he can show you his room." Catherine winked at her. "I wouldn't worry about the room too much. It's Alex's old room. He wasn't using it." "You're amazing. Thank you so much." Mia smiled at Catherine and fell instantly in love with her. Alex shuffled to the edge of the couch, and Mia reached over for her crutches only to squeal when Alex's arm hooked under her and grunted and stood, cradling her in his arms. "Hey, put me down." Mia whacked his chest. Catherine laughed. "You're gonna hurt yourself. Put me down, Alex." His arms gripped her tighter, and he shook his head. "No, never." They spent the rest of the day at his parents' house, and even ended up having dinner there. Zane slept in his car seat, and Mia sat with her head resting against the window of the car, with her eyes closed as he drove into his garage. He parked, and wasn't surprised when he stopped the car that Mia didn't wake. She had a big couple of days, and what they'd done last night and this morning had probably worn her out too. Slipping out of the car, he shut the door and went over and unlocked the door to the house, getting the doorstop and wedging it in to keep it open. He then went to the back passenger door to get Zane out. He carefully undid the seatbelt and gently lifted the sleeping child into his arms. He took Zane straight to his room, placing him on his bed, taking his shoes off and tucking him in under the covers. "Good night, little bunny. Sweet dreams, my boy." He kissed his forehead and left to fetch his mother. Mia was still in the same position as when he left, Slowly, he opened her passenger door, careful of her leaning on it, and gathered her against him so he could carry her inside. As he hooked his arms under her, she moaned and turned in toward him. Smiling, he held her close as he eased away, mindful of her cast leg. Alex took her up the steps to the bedrooms, pausing at the top step and debating about where he should put her. He wanted her in his bed with him, like she'd been last night. But Alex knew, with her son now there, she might not agree. Going to the guest room, he paused at the threshold and gazed down at the beautiful woman in his arms. She looked so content, so peaceful. A small smile graced her lips, and she sighed, snuggling her head against him. Damn, so much for good intentions. He couldn't sleep without her. They were together now. Zane would have to get used to them together. Alex wanted Mia with him. They were both adults. She could sleep with him. Backing out of the guest room, he went to his bedroom and laid Mia gently on his bed. He undid her shoe, and she groaned and mumbled nonsense about not wanting to move and let her sleep just a little more as he undressed her and put one of his shirts on her. She didn't wake, and when they were done, she burrowed under the covers. Alex chuckled as he stripped himself down to his boxers. Mia was a deep sleeper. He bet a bomb could go off and she wouldn't wake. Slipping into bed, he smiled as Mia inched closer to him, her arms snaking out to hold on to him. Happy, he closed his eyes, content in knowing he'd made the right choice and not only being with her, but bringing her into his bed. They would deal with Zane if he had any questions, because there was no way he was giving this up. Mia could hear whispering near her. I know you want to wake Mommy, but your mom needs sleep. Remember, I told you about her needing rest so she can get better again and play with you. Uh-huh, I still remembers. I love my mommy, and I want her to feel better so she can play with me again. Mia kept her eyes closed a little longer, just to listen to Alex and Zane. Her lips curled up in the corners as she smiled, listening to them. Good, Bunny. How about we get up and make her a special breakfast? Zane squealed with joy, and Alex shushed him and groaned. Quiet, bud. Mia couldn't help the chuckle that slipped free. They sounded so cute. Slowly, she opened her eyes with a smile on her face. But what she saw had made that smile turning into a frown. Why was she in Alex's bedroom? Gazing up and to her left, she saw her son sitting on Alex's bare chest. What the hell? Curious even more so now, she stretched her arm under the cover, checking to see if Alex was underneath, and her fingers met with bare skin. Why am I here? Why are you here? She blurted. Zane giggled. Silly Mummy. Mummies and daddies are supposed to sleep in the same bed. Sitting up, Mia stared at her son, wondering where he'd heard that. She didn't have to wait long as he continued. Guess what else Olivia told me? Olivia was Alex's niece. I don't know, baby. She said, if girl kisses boys, that's how babies are made. Zane giggled. I told her that's wrong, 'cause I kiss you all the time. He rolled his eyes. So, she went and asked her daddy and came back and told me that you's gotta sleep like mummies and daddies in the same bed, and I have to sleep over at Grandpa and Grandma lots. Olivia said she's always staying at Grandma and Grandpa's, so she's gonna have lots of brothers and sisters. Mia bit her lip to keep from laughing. Are you gonna kiss Alex and make a baby? I like Grandpa and Grandma, so I can stay at their house lots. I want a brother. Can I have one, please? His little lips trembled as he pouted and begged. Mia's face felt hot, and she knew she was probably bright red, embarrassed beyond belief, and momentarily stunned silent. Mia avoided looking at Alex. Oh, God, her kid had no filter. Closing her eyes, she wished the ground would open up and she could sink down and it would close again. She heard a chuckle, soft at first, but then it got louder until it turned into a full-blown laugh. Opening her eyes, she glared at Alex, who was in hysterics. This is all your fault, she mumbled. With that, he laughed harder. He shook his head and between chuckles said, Buddy, it takes a little more than that. Zane's happy little smile vanished and he deflated. Oh, well, what you's got to do then? 'Cause I really want a brother. Ha! That shut Alex up. He stopped laughing instantly, his eyes going wide as if he just realized what he'd done. Mia smirked as Alex gave her a pleading stare. Baby, what Olivia said is sorta true. Is it? Zane started smiling again. Yeah. You have to kiss, and mummies and daddies have to sleep, but, well, Mia was about to say, you have to love someone. But she knew firsthand that she didn't. She didn't love Zane's father, and she hadn't been married to him either. So she couldn't say that. Unable to think of what else to say without telling him things he was way too young for, Mia added the only other thing she could think of. You've got to hug a lot too, and other things I'll tell you about when you're an adult. Zane nodded. Okay, well, yous can do that. Yous are adults. Crap, this wasn't going at all well. Looking at Alex, Mia mouthed, a little help? She figured since it was his niece telling Zane things and Zane finding Alex in bed with her, that had probably started this idea in her son's head. Your mom needs to get better first. Mia was shocked when not only did this seem to work, but that Alex had basically just told Zane that when she got better, she and Alex would try for a baby. Zane nodded and climbed off the bed. Let's make Mommy breakfast. Sure, buddy. Alex winked at her and followed her son as he ran out of the room. He stopped at the entry. Sorry, I'll learn. Mia knew what he meant. He shouldn't have told her son there was more. It's okay. Kids are sponges. They soak up everything anyone tells them or they hear. Alex nodded. Yeah, I'm learning that. I maybe should have put you in the spare room. I was being selfish and I wanted you with me. Mia wasn't sure how she felt about Alex placing her in his room, and not the spare one. They had slept together the night before, but Zane hadn't been around. Zane had never seen her sleep in any bed other than her own, let alone sleep with a man. This has to be what you want. I like you, Alex, but I don't want Zane to get confused if you don't want us as a package. Alex smiled at her. I know. I want this. He left, and Mia let out a breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. Alex had gone over to help his brother Owen move into his new house. Beth sat next to Mia, and Landon and Zane sat on the floor before them playing Skylander on the Xbox that Alex had hooked up to his big flat-screen TV. Zane was in heaven. He thought the huge TV hooked up to the Xbox was the coolest thing in the world. Alex hadn't wanted to help his brother, as he had wanted to be back at work on Monday, and he wanted to spend his last 2 days with Mia and Zane. But she felt bad because he'd given up so much time to be with them already. So, Beth said as she came over and sat on the sofa with 2 hot chocolates, handing one to Mia. How is it really going with Mr. Hottie? I mean, from what I've seen, he and his family are beyond perfect. Mia took a sip of the hot chocolate goodness. They are perfect. He is beyond perfect. I feel like I'm dreaming. I'm scared I'm going to wake up, and it's all been a dream. And I don't have him or his amazing family, and I'm alone in the hospital. Beth took Mia's hot chocolate and placed both mugs on the side coffee table. She then pulled Mia against her and into a hug. It's real. You deserve the amazing family and him. Easing from Beth, Mia stared up at her best friend. Her green eyes shone, and Mia knew that she was fighting not to cry. Thank you. The tears dropped. Mia, you were dealt a shitty hand in life, with what happened with Zane's father, your parents, school, and so on. But those things have made you stronger. They've made you who you are today. Beth squeezed her hand. I don't know how you do it. You're a year younger than me, and I had both my parents' support and Landon's father. He may only see him once every fortnight for a couple of hours, but at least he does see him. You've raised Zane all by yourself and have done an amazing job. You deserve this wonderful family and perfect man. She wiped her eyes. Enjoy it, Mia, and embrace them, because I know if they know what a caring and giving person you are, they will love you just like I do. Throwing herself at Beth, Mia hugged her friend. Right then, she felt so lucky. Thank you, she whispered. You're awesome, and the best friend I could ever ask for. They laughed and kissed each other's cheeks until they broke out in giggles. Oh God, bro. If I knew this was going on at your house, I would have come over a lot more. I'm in heaven. The voice came from behind them, and Beth and Mia separated, and Mia turned and saw Lockie, Alex's brother, standing at the entry to the lounge room. Alex stood next to him, and behind them was Owen. Oh, don't stop on my account, Lockie continued. He wiggled his eyebrows up and down. She and Beth burst out laughing at the looks on their faces. Lockie wasn't the only one who seemed to have enjoyed what he walked in on. Owen's eyes were wide, and he had a huge grin. Alex's blue eyes were dark with lust, and his lips were curled up in a smirk that said he was definitely having naughty thoughts. Winking at Beth, Mia sighed dramatically. We have been found out. Here I thought we had at least a couple more hours of makeout time before Alex got home." "Holy shit!" Lockie whacked Alex on the back. "You lucky son of a bitch! You can totally have a threesome with two hot MILFs." Alex groaned. She and Beth were laughing so hard they were holding their stomachs. They watched the guys adjust their pants and narrow their gazes on them. Zane and Landon were so absorbed in Skylanders, they didn't even turn to see what their mums were laughing about. Mia did notice both Landon and Zane had moved closer to hear the TV. "Oh, your faces were awesome," Mia said between giggles. "Lucky, you're sweet. It's good to know I'm a MILF." Mia burst out laughing at the murderous look Alex gave Lockie. Mia felt great. It was nice to know men found her attractive, especially hot ones. Lockie may have no tact, but what he'd said and the looks on their faces had given her a huge boost in confidence, and she knew as she looked at Beth that she was feeling the same way. Sometimes, being a single mom, you forgot that you're still a woman, and you are your own person separate from your children. It's nice to know you're attractive. A human. Alex walked over to her and leaned down and kissed her. Mia savored him and almost forgot about the others in the room until Lockie made himself known again. "Oh, there are children in the room." Alex eased away, and Beth glared at Lockie. "They haven't even turned from the screen." "I wasn't talking about them." Lockie stuck his tongue out at Beth. "I was talking about me and my sensitive eyes." Shaking her head, Mia tried not to giggle at Beth's huff. Mia hadn't seen her friend like this before. Beth was giving Lockie a nasty glare, while he pretended to look innocent. Mia thought, as she looked at Alex to see if he'd caught it too. Alex winked at her, and Mia wiggled back in her seat as the guys came in and sat on the recliners. Chapter 5. Work sucked. Alex had expected some ribbing here and there from his coworkers about Mia, but the pranks were too much, like high school applications or replacing his name tag with Sugar Daddy. He'd forgotten the age difference between Mia and him. Mia didn't act the way he thought a normal 21-year-old would act. She had an old soul, and Alex never found it hard to find topics to talk to her about. She was smart and wasn't afraid to ask questions and learn when she didn't know something. He liked that about her. Alex knew women his own age who didn't do that. Alex was happy with Mia. If he could forget about their age difference, he was sure others would too. He would wait until work died down with their games before he introduced Mia. He hoped, once his work friends realized how serious he was about Mia, they'd quit the pranks. Having just come home from work, rushing his shower at work, eager to get to Mia, Alex went in search of her, finding her in the kitchen. He stood by the entrance enjoying his view. She danced around the kitchen to Snow Patrol as she made dinner. Mia had become so good moving around with the cast, it barely hindered her. Her ass swayed as she stood before the stove, stirring. He zoned in on the plump, round globes in the short summer dress she wore. Damn, she had a fine ass. He hadn't realized he was an ass man until he met Mia. But oh, he was, and a boob man too. And Mia had an abundance of both. Quietly, he made his way to Mia. Coming up behind her, he wrapped his arms around her waist and gathered her into him. Smells good. It did, but she smelled better, like chocolate cupcakes. Alex felt Mia jump, but as soon as she realized it was him, she leaned back against him. I made a roast lamb for Lachlan to say thank you for taking Zane today. Do you think he'll like it? Mia was the only person besides Lockie's work colleagues who called him Lachlan. Even their parents called him Lockie. Kissing Mia's neck, he rubbed his growing erection against her ass. He'll like it. Nibbling on her delicate skin, he slid his fingers under her dress and moved her panties aside. Her breath hitched, and Alex pressed his now rock-hard cock more firmly against her. Turn everything off. Let's go enjoy what little time we have before my son comes home. Mia gasped and whirled around in his embrace, tears glistening in her eyes, ready to fall. You just called Zane your son. Recapping what he just said, he shrugged. It was true. Zane was his son. He may not be his blood, but he was in every way that counted. I did. Brushing her tears as they fell, Alex leaned down and feathered kisses over her lips. I want you to think about something for me. I want to adopt Zane. I want to be his dad. He's an amazing kid, and I'd be lucky to have him as a son. Mia's body shook with her sobs. Oh, God, you're perfect. She jumped on him, forgetting about her cast. Alex grunted as a solid cast hit his waist. He didn't let go of Mia, though. He held her to him as she covered his face with kisses. When her lips met his, he opened and sought entry. Their tongues locked together, and he backed her up so her ass rested on the counter. Hooking his fingers under her dress straps, he slipped them off her shoulders and pushed the dress down to reveal her breast. Yes, he hissed. She wasn't wearing a bra. Cupping her breast, he caressed them and took the tips between his thumb and forefingers and squeezed. The sound of giggling had him reluctantly pausing. They're kissing again, Zlox. They're always kissing. Zane's voice made him stop and then pull the dress up and over Mia's breast and ease away, but just enough so he could see his brother and Zane. Mia was bright red and needed a minute to compose herself. Alex's dick strained against his sweatpants. It was best he stayed behind the bench. Alex smiled as Lockie came more into the kitchen, with Zane in one arm and balloon show bags and a stuffed teddy bear in the other. Zane was covered in what looked like chocolate, dirt, sprinkles, and glitter. It looks like you had fun. Did you give him any food other than candy and chocolate? Alex raised his brow. Zane frantically nodded his head. Uh-huh, I used to have a hot dog, too. A hot dog, little guy. Lockie kissed Zane's forehead. That's what Isa said, Uncle Locks. Alex bit his lip to stop the chuckle from slipping out as he watched Zane roll his eyes. Lockie didn't hold back, though, and laughed. I love this little man. Zane beamed at Lockie. Mia straightened herself as she carefully got down from the counter and turned to face Zane and Lockie. Thank you so much for taking Zane today. And looks like he had a ball. Did you say thank you to Lachlan, Zane? The stern mummy voice was in action. Zane's little head bounced up and down. I so did. Also times. Uncle Locks is the bested. He bought me a Skylander shows bags. Zane practically vibrated in Lockie's arms. Good God, how much candy and crap did Lockie give him? Zane looked like he was high as a kite. Lockie winked. No problem. Did you know your son is a little player? He's better to take out than Grace. Zane clapped his hands, glaring at his brother, hoping he'd catch the hint to shut up. Alex moaned when Zane added, Uncle Locks got a 6. Zane held up his sticky-looking fingers. Numbers from girls. Zane's brows furrowed. You knows what? Alex shook his head, but Zane continued. They were pretty, but they shows their boobies lots more than even Auntie Steph. Alex couldn't stop his laughter this time. It burst free and consumed him. His son was hilarious. Alex went over to Lockie and took Zane on all his new things. Hugging Zane to him, he pressed a kiss on his forehead. Missed you, buddy. Sticky arms wrapped around his neck, and Zane kissed his cheek. Love you. Alex's heart melted. I love you too. He squeezed him tighter, and Zane giggled. It's... His words trailed off when he saw Mia's stance. Her hands were on her hips, and her back was rigid. Don't get me wrong when I say this. I do appreciate you taking Zane out today. What I don't appreciate is you using my son to pick up women. Lockie raised his hands. I didn't use my nephew to pick up women. He's a magnet. I promise. I didn't approach any of the women who gave me their number. They approached me. Really? Mia's voice dripped heavy with sarcasm. A smug smile spread over Lockie's face. Really? Every time your son smiled, showing his dimples, I had a woman tell me how adorable they thought my son was. And then I'd tell them he was my nephew, and well, it went from there. Lockie tried to give a look that fell between innocent and I'd never tell a lie. He felt miserably. Mummy? Zane whined, saving Lockie. Mummy, all the girls like me firsted. They smiled and pulled funny faces. Alex could see Mia fighting to contain her laughter. She bit her lip, and her body shook. Oh, I'm sure they did. She walked over and wrapped her arms around them. I love you, baby boy. I love you, Mommy. Zane kissed Mia on the cheek. Mia turned to face Lockie. Sorry, I shouldn't have accused you. Thank you for taking him to the fair. Lockie waved his hand. No problem. I'll take him any time. His eyes softened. You have done an amazing job with him, Mia. He's a great kid. You're lucky to have found them, brother. The smile that covered his face was bright. Mia left his embrace and went to Lockie, hugging him. "I've made you roast lamb for dinner, and it'll be ready in 20 minutes. You didn't have to. Roast lamb is my favorite." She stepped away from him. "Why don't you and Alex go into the lounge room while I take Zane up for a bath? By the time I'm done, everything should be ready." "I can bathe Zane, sweetheart." Alex was already holding Zane, and he didn't mind doing bath time. The glow of her smile warmed him. "Sure, I'll start on the gravy, and Lockie can tell me what he and Zane got up to." He loved that she trusted him with Zane. He hoped she would let him adopt him. Mia waited until she heard the bath running before she went into the dining room where Lachlan was setting the table. Alex's 40th birthday was only a couple of weeks away, and she'd been stumped at what to get him. But tonight, Mia knew just what she could do, but she'd need help. "Lachlan, I need your opinion." "On what?" He paused, fork still in hand. "I had no idea what to get Alex for his birthday, but I think I know now." Lachlan raised his eyebrow and placed the forks on the table. "Not long before you arrived, Alex asked if he could adopt Zane and be his father." "That's great." "Yes, it's amazing." Her heart sang with delight at just the thought of it. Alex was a wonderful man, and he treated Zane as if he was his own. "Are you going to let him?" "That's where I need your help to get it organized. I'm wanting to do it as a present for his birthday. Do you think he'd like it?" Uncertainty crept into her. Would Alex's family be okay with this? Would they be happy? Or would this start to cause problems? Her stomach sank, and she cleared her suddenly dry throat before gazing up at Lachlan. The smile that spread over his face had her nerves calming. He'd love it. That would be the best present you could give him. Beaming at him, she knew she'd chosen right. Although, now that she thought about it, she realized it had never even crossed her mind to say no to Alex. He was an amazing father now. If he wanted the title to be official, she would never deny him or Zane that privilege. Work wasn't getting better. Instead, the pranks were getting worse. Every day, there was something new in Alex's desk and in his locker. Yesterday had been a book titled How to Handle a Midlife Crisis, The Do's and Don'ts. Another time, it had been brochures about red sports cars. His locker had been filled with Viagra pill bottles. And another time, it was filled with sugar daddy candy. Everyone was hounding Alex to bring Mia to Magoo's Pub, the local pub where everyone hung out after work. He hadn't been going as much because he was eager to get home to Mia and Zane. The jokes and pranks, though, weren't making him eager for Mia to meet his work colleagues. Derek, who he was partnered with the most, had been the only one to leave him the hell alone. Tonight, he was doing a double shift with Derek, and he would be arriving soon to pick him up. He paced back and forth and debated if he should wait outside or let Derek in. Mia was in the kitchen cleaning up dinner and packing him food for work. She was an amazing cook. He had yet to eat anything of hers that didn't taste like a slice of heaven. At the rate he was eating, he was going to have to do a gym workout twice a day so he didn't become huge. The food was so good that people at work had found out, and if he left any of his food in the fridge or where it could be seen, it would be gone before he got a chance to eat it himself. Guilt assaulted him as he realized what an ass he was being. Mia did all the cooking, and his house was spotless. She listened to him talk about work, and she asked about his friends and work colleagues. Mia had never once complained when he stayed back with his mates or went to the pub. When he went over all that, he really did feel like a dick. He should be proud of Mia, not hiding her away. Going to her, he gathered her to him, hugging her tight. She stared up at him with a question in her eyes. Taking the container lids out of her hands, he kissed her knuckles. "Thank you." "For what?" "For being you. For being so amazing. You've been making me breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. I come home, and the house looks like a show home." Leaning down, he brushed his lips over hers. "You don't have to do all this. Don't get me wrong, I appreciate it, but I don't expect it. I don't want or need a show home. People live here. You, my son, and I. I expect the house to look lived in. You should be resting, enjoying it." She sighed and kissed him. "I'm lucky to have you." "No, it's me who's lucky. I want you to meet Derek. He's the guy I get partnered with the most. He should be here any minute." She beamed up at him, and the shining happiness that was spread over her face had his heart fluttering so fast he knew he was a goner. He would do anything to see that look on her face for the rest of time. He was falling for Mia, and he was falling hard. Taking her lips to his own, he savored her. Gliding his hands down her back, he cupped her ass and squeezed. She moaned and clutched tighter to him. A loud, cleared throat had him reluctantly pulling away and glaring at the intruder. Alex was surprised to see Derek staring back at him. I think someone needs to have a talk with a little boy about opening the doors to strangers. Mia spun in his embrace. Zane Lexington, come here now. The little boy in question peeked from behind Derek. He knew he'd done wrong. His shoulders were drooped and his lips were trembling. He slowly came toward Mia. You know you're not allowed to open the door. You never did it at our place. Why here? Mia stepped forward and placed her hands on her hips. Mommy, he has police clothes like did Alex. Yous were kissing like yous always ours, so Isa let him in. Alex knew he shouldn't laugh, but when Derek started, Alex couldn't hold back. Zane was just so cute. Mia's elbow to the chest didn't stop him. It only had him laughing harder, especially when he caught the little grin on Zane's face. Going to Zane, he picked him up, kissed both his cheeks, and went and stood with Mia. Buddy, I know you thought it was okay to let Derek in because he's wearing a police uniform like mine. But when Mommy and I are here and neither of us are hurt, you don't open the door. Come and get either your mother or me. We just want to make sure you're safe. It would make us very happy if you listen and promise you won't do this again. He looked up and caught Mia's gaze. She smiled and nodded. Good. He must have said the right things. Zane nodded. Okays. He looked over at Mia. I'm sorry, Mommy. I won't open the door again. Unless yous or Alex are hurted and needs help. Okay? Mia came over and wrapped her arms around both him and Zane. Thanks, baby. She kissed Zane's forehead and then reached up and kissed Alex's cheek. She let go and turned around to Derek. Hi. Sorry about that. I'm Mia. She held her hand out and Derek took it and shook. Derek, nice to meet you, Mia. He winked in Zane's direction. The little terror that let you in is Zane. Derek waved. Oi, Zane. I'm sorry for getting you in trouble, but your parents are right. Alex's stomach flipped at Derek calling him Zane's parent. He liked that. His friend saw how he felt about Zane. That's okay. Zane sighed dramatically. I'll be ready in a moment. I just need to grab my food Mia made. Derek flipped his hand back and forth. No rush. I'm early. He followed them into the kitchen. Would you like some lasagna and salad, Derek? I also have some carrot cake and blueberry muffins. Groaning, when Derek's eyes lit up, Alex knew he wasn't going to say no. And once he ate Mia's food, he would have one more person trying to steal his lunches. 25 minutes later, 10 minutes late for work, they got in the police cruiser. Derek had lasagna, carrot cake, blueberry muffins, and brownies in his hands. He was currently stuffing the last pancake into his mouth. I now know why you're keeping her from everyone. I would too. He set his food in his bag. She's a sweetheart, and her boy is adorable. Her food is the best I've ever tasted. She's way too good for your ass. He started the car. If she ever decides to leave you and go for a better-looking model. He sat up straighter and wiggled his eyebrows. I'll gladly take her. Punching him on the arm, Alex snarled. Shut up and drive. Derek laughed, and Alex can't help the smile that slipped free. He didn't care what prank they played at work today, because he knew how good he had it. And now Derek knew it too. This week had been better. Mia was used to getting around now and not in pain. She only had a little over 2 weeks left until she got her cast off, and this coming weekend was Alex's birthday. Thanks to Alex's family, she had everything ready for Alex to sign papers to adopt Zane. She started to worry last week when Alex started back at work and seemed off. But after Derek came around, who since meeting her seemed to have almost moved in himself, Alex went back to his usual self. Zane was at daycare, and before they went to pick him up, they needed to food shop. Are you sure you're okay to walk around the shops? I can buy food on my own. Alex helped her down from the car. I'm fine. I'm getting around really good now with the cast. Okay, but if it gets to be too much, tell me and we'll stop. Mia waved him off, and he went and got a trolley. She met him at the entrance, and he reached for her hand and hooked her arm around him. It worked out good to lean on him as she hobbled along. The list was bigger than she usually got, and Mia hated to admit it, but it was nice not to buy the home brand. Alex wouldn't let her pay rent or help towards petrol, but this would be the first shop they'd done together. She intended to pay for the groceries. She saved a little over the weeks being in hospital and living with Alex, as she hadn't had to worry about petrol or food. Alex dropped whatever he wanted into the trolley and didn't even seem to glance at the price. By the time they reached halfway, Mia was sure they'd need a second trolley, and she started to become more cautious of what she put in and the price. "Alex!" A male voice called from behind them. "Alex, is that you?" Alex turned and Mia followed, seeing a man in his late to mid-40s coming to them. He had a smile on his face. "Anthony, hi." Alex shook the man's hand. Mia stood waiting to be introduced. She hadn't been introduced to many of Alex's friends or associates. "We missed you last night at Magoo's pub. We thought you'd want to celebrate after you and Derek closed the Andaya case." Alex shrugged, and Mia frowned when he still didn't introduce her. This man was one of Alex's co-workers. Was Alex embarrassed by her? She glanced down at herself. She had a cast on one leg, and on the foot without a cast, she wore a black fashion-heeled sandal. She had on a cute little 50s style black and pink halter-neck dress. Her hair was down because she knew how much Alex liked that, and she even had a little makeup on. Was something wrong? She let go of Alex and stepped back behind him. Her stomach sank, and her chest ached. Alex and Anthony spoke, and for the first time in weeks, Mia felt invisible. She felt like she wasn't good enough. Mia didn't like that feeling. She hadn't felt like she wasn't good enough for someone in a long time. Squaring her shoulders, she narrowed her gaze on Alex's back and then took a step forward. When there was a break in the conversation, she smiled and held her hand out. "Hi, Anthony. I'm Mia. It's nice to meet you." She didn't state she was a friend of Alex's, or his anything, because she was mad at him. Anthony smiled and shook her hand. "It's nice to meet you, Mia." She didn't miss the frown he sent Alex's way, or the raised eyebrow. "How are you feeling? You look great." Mia blushed as Anthony eyed her up and down. "Thank you. I'm feeling much better. It's nice to meet another of Alex's coworkers." "You should come to Magoo's pub. We all hang out there after work." Alex's arms hooked around her waist, and she stiffened. Oh, so now he was willing to show his friend that they not only knew each other but were together. She wiggled out of his hold and shot a glare his way before turning back to Anthony. "Thank you so much for the invitation. It was nice meeting you. I hope to see you this weekend at Alex's party." Plastering a fake smile on her face, she nodded to both Alex and Anthony. "If you'll excuse me, I'll let you two talk while I finish shopping. I have to pick up my son from daycare in an hour." Not waiting for a response, Mia turned and leaned on the trolley as she walked away. As she retreated, she heard Anthony say, "She's very pretty, and you'd be an idiot to let her walk away." She didn't listen to Alex's response. All she wanted to do was get the essentials and get the hell out of there now. Maybe having a relationship with Alex was wrong. Chapter 6. Alex's party loomed, and Mia was getting nervous. This would be the first time she officially met all of his friends and colleagues. She'd been introduced briefly to a couple of friends and a colleague here or there when they'd been out and run into one, but she'd never been invited to socialize with any of them. Mia was starting to worry more and more that Alex was either embarrassed by her or ashamed of her. They hadn't talked about the other day at the shops, and that didn't sit well with Mia either. She probably should have said something, but she was scared to rock the boat. What if what she worried was true? Beth told her she was overthinking it and that Alex adored her. But Mia wasn't sure Beth was right, especially after the other day at the shops. "I think your mother has invited every person you've ever known to your big bad 40th. Mia giggled. "She won't say your age to me." Alex told her how old he was in the hospital. Mia knew it was an issue for him. Was that the reason why she didn't socialize with his friends? Was he still hung up on her age? He winked at her. "How old do I look like I'm turning today?" He playfully batted his eyelashes. Playing along, Mia tapped her chin and thought, "I know you think you're old because you said it a couple of times, so I'll say older than you look. 35? He laughed and picked her up, kissing her with the passion she was coming to be hooked on. "You're good for my ego, sweetheart." He winked at her and fluttered his eyelashes. "I'm scared to tell you how old I am." She rolled her eyes at his bad acting. I don't care how old you are. Mia was done with the game. She clung to him, her fingers digging into his shoulders. Is it the age gap? He eased back, and she reluctantly let him go. His expression grew serious. I'm 40, and you're 21. That isn't a small gap. Mia's heart sank. She was right. There was a reason he hadn't taken her out to socialize with his friends. She stared at him, trying to find traces that showed his age. But she saw no gray hairs and barely a wrinkle. He was in shape, better shape than she was. I turned 22 in another month. That's only 18 years. She chewed on her bottom lip. Did it matter to her? He'd been that age the last couple of weeks, and he kept up with her just fine. In fact, he was insatiable. Not only did he make love to her almost every night, he also helped her with Zane. She gazed at him, noticing his frown. What do you want me to say? That you're old and I may have to buy you a walking frame soon? Should I have bought you Viagra for your birthday? She squealed as he picked her up, careful of her cast. Old. If we weren't at my parents', I'd show you who'll be needing that walking frame, and I can tell you it won't be me. Laughing, she wrapped her arms around him. God, she loved this man. She stilled in his embrace for a moment as the truth washed over her. Oh no, she'd fallen in love with him. Burying her head against him, she hid herself for a moment while she gathered herself. She couldn't love him. He wasn't even confident in their relationship. He was still worried about their age gap. Mia wondered if that was all he worried about, and if it was only the age that was keeping him from having her socialize with his friends and colleagues. Mia needed to take a step back. If Alex was going to adopt Zane, she needed to focus on friendship. She may love Alex, but her heart wasn't the only one at stake. If Alex broke her heart, she knew not only would hers smash into a million pieces, so would Zane's. Easing away from him, she got off him and sent a stiff smile his way. We better finish setting up the tables. People should be arriving soon, and I need to get ready. He nodded, and they got to work. By the time she made it to the guest room to get ready, Mia had decided that she was taking a step back. If Alex didn't want his friends to know they were together, then she wouldn't tell them. The sex with Alex might be amazing, but she could be friends with him. She could give him what he wanted. His parents' house was packed full of people. Half of them he was barely friends with. But Zane was having a ball, so he didn't care. There were kids everywhere, and he was running around with them with a huge grin on his face. Strangely enough, Alex hadn't seen Mia. The last time he'd seen her was when she left to go get ready, just before the first couple of guests arrived. He'd been told by Zane that she vanished into the kitchen with his mother and sister when she returned. Alex sat at a table filled with his brothers and some of his closest friends, most of them from work. Marcus, a work colleague, and a guy Alex couldn't much stand, came and sat at the table. I hear you have a woman. He winked at Alex. I'm told she's the start of your midlife crisis. The guys around snickered. Fuck you. Shut the hell up. Alex had been getting shit from his colleagues since he returned to work. He didn't mind a bit of ribbing here or there, but tonight was his party, and not only was his family around, Mia was there too. Marcus, being the idiot he was, didn't listen. Does she have daddy issues? You haven't brought her to Magoo's pub. You think she'll see a younger model and leave you. Is she not that attractive and thought she can snag an older man? Or are you just not that into her and want to live it up before you get too old to get it up? He laughed, and Alex was about ready to punch the idiot if he didn't shut his mouth. She has a kid. Maybe she wants someone willing to... Finish that sentence, and I swear I'll fucking kick your ass. Lockie stood, his voice loud and clear. Alex was shocked, because Lockie was usually the one to joke around and diffuse fights by making a comment here or there. His motto was always, I'm a lover, not a fighter. He never made threats. Lockie turned his gaze on Alex. What the fuck is wrong with you? Why the hell didn't you say anything? At least stick up for Mia. He shook his head, then narrowed his gaze on the guys around him. Mia is an amazing woman. She hasn't chased my brother. He's the one who started pursuing her. My God, listening to that guy. He pointed to Marcus. It's no wonder my brother hasn't brought her to Magoo's pub. Lockie took a step toward Marcus. You need to leave. Chad stood up next to Lockie, and then Owen stood on Lockie's other side. Marcus's eyes widened, and he slowly stood and backed away. At least he knew when to leave. His brothers all stared at the remaining people at the table. I suggest you leave now if you have a problem or feel the need to voice anything negative about our friend Mia. Lockie's voice was stern and broke no room for arguments. The rest of his mates and colleagues shook their head, a few mumbling, "No, I don't." With that, his brothers turned and left him at the now quiet table. It was one of his closest friends, Roger, who broke the silence. "Is she here? Are you going to introduce us?" Oh, God. He'd been a douche. The party had been going on for hours, and not only had he not introduced Mia to people, he hadn't brought her over to meet his friends. He'd ignored her. He was an ass. Lockie was right. Something was wrong with him. He had done the chasing. He moved her into his house, into his bed. She never asked him for any of this. Now that he thought about it, she didn't ask him for anything other than requesting that he not stop seeing Zane if they split up. Mia's amazing, and if she ever leaves this idiot, I'll gladly take her. Derek grinned at Alex. She hasn't complained once about me basically moving in, and having to cook for me too these last couple of weeks. Alex groaned, and felt even worse the more Derek talked about how wonderful Mia was. I've met her too, Anthony added, interrupting his thoughts. She's a pretty little thing. Anthony smiled at Alex. I'd be worried about bringing her to Magoo's pub. She'll attract a lot of interest, especially if they've eaten her cooking. You, Alex growled. You're the one who eats my food. Anthony at least had the good grace to admit it. Yup, the first time was a mistake. I thought it was mine. But once I got a taste, I couldn't resist. I don't even bring my own food now. He winked at Alex. The table erupted in chuckles. Now I definitely want to meet her, Roger said. Standing, Alex looked around the yard searching for her. He didn't see her anywhere. He didn't see Zane either. Had they left? His stomach sank, and he berated himself again for being such an ass. Without saying another word, Alex left the table and went in search of Mia. Now that he thought about it, she'd been off before. She'd stayed clear of him since their talk earlier about age. Mia didn't seem at all bothered by his age. She'd argued that it was him that was unsure. Fuck. What the hell was wrong with him? It had to be today, his birthday and turning 40. He found Mia in Zane's bedroom, his old room, sitting on the floor, reading to a group of 5 children, including Zane. He stood by the door and watched as she made faces and changed her voice for each character. The kids were enraptured by her and hanging on her every word. By the end of the book, he was hooked too. The children begged for more when she was done. No more. I've read 6 books now, 2 more than I agreed to. She smiled brightly at the children. You know what? I think it's time for birthday cake. The kids squealed and got up off the floor and ran out of the room. Zane didn't even stop when he saw him step into the room. I've been looking for you. He moved in closer to her. She tidied out the room. Well, I've been here, and before I was in the kitchen helping with lunch. I'm sorry. He truly was. His stomach churned and his chest ached. She raised her eyebrow. You have nothing to be sorry for. It's your birthday. Go and enjoy it. The smile she gave him was more of a grimace. If she hadn't been sure before that he said something wrong earlier, he was now. Reaching for her hand, he pulled her to him. Come with me. I want to introduce you to some people. He didn't give her a choice. He threaded his fingers through hers and pulled her where he wanted to go. She followed behind him, and even though he was only holding her hand, he could feel how stiff she was. Something was definitely wrong. Alex didn't stop until he was before his friends again. Mia, I'd like to introduce you to Roger, Anthony, Reese, Brad, and Samuel. Hi, she waved. Nice to meet you all. I'm Alex's friend Mia. He winced as Mia introduced herself as his friend and not his girlfriend. It didn't go unnoticed by his friends either. Anthony grinned at her. I've met you before, love. Mia's eyes brightened in recognition. Yes, while we were grocery shopping. That's right. I've had the privilege of eating your cooking, too. Your homemade chicken pie was a favorite. Thank you. Next time I make it, I'll put an extra slice in for you. She's a keeper, Anthony gushed. I know. Moving in behind her, Alex gathered her to him and wrapped his arms around her waist. She stayed stiff in his embrace for a moment. Leaning down, he nuzzled her neck, breathing in her sweet scent before kissing the delicate skin just below her ear and whispering in her ear, You're mine. It wasn't an I love you, but it was close enough. Alex made distancing herself from him today easy. She She hadn't seen him since the first couple of guests had arrived. It wasn't until after lunch and close to birthday cake time, when he found her in Zane's room, reading to the children, that he started making it hard to stay away from him. He introduced her to his friends, but she was the one that made it clear they were only friends. After this morning and the last couple of days, Mia was still convincing herself, but she was sure it was best. It seemed more and more clear that Alex was embarrassed by her. Anthony, the sweetheart, complimented her on her cooking, and her confidence that had been slipping away all day rose. She sent a grateful smile his way and thanked him, promising to add a slice to Alex's lunch just for him next time. The beaming smile Anthony sent her way had a genuine smile splitting over her own face. At Anthony's praise, Alex came up behind her and wrapped his arms around her and brought her against him. She resisted the urge to melt into his embrace and stayed firm in her resolve to keep her distance. Her resistance slipped when Alex nestled her neck, kissed her skin, and whispered just loud enough for the table to hear, "You're mine." Mia felt like she couldn't breathe. Her heart seemed to beat too fast for her to help take in any air, and her stomach churned. Shivers, and not the good kind, spread over her skin. She forced a smile on her face and excused herself. "I'll be back. I'm going to help with the cake." Pushing herself out of Alex's embrace, she tried not to run. Making her way to the front of the house where it was quiet, she took gulps of air as she gazed up at the sky. How dare Alex say that to her? He'd been a grade A wanker lately. He made her feel things she promised she wouldn't let anyone ever make her feel again. Alex had been a god, sending help her way with the accident and moving her in and everything with Zane. But as a boyfriend the last couple of weeks, he sucked. Sure, he was amazing in bed, and when it was just them, or even with his family, he was great. But he hadn't introduced her to his friends. Even when he had chances to introduce her, he hadn't. She had to introduce herself. Mia deserved better. She wanted better. She may have fallen in love with Alex, the Alex she got to be with when they were alone or with his family. But the Alex around other people, she didn't like at all. "You're the only woman he's ever brought around." Mia jumped and turned, startled by Catherine's voice. "Oh, women have turned up without invites, but Alex has never brought one through my door." "He didn't bring me either. The first time I graced your door, I came with Alex to pick up Zane." Catherine shook her head. "No, he came through the door clutching you so tight. If he'd brought you just for Zane, he wouldn't have done that, and..." Catherine grabbed her hands and held them tight. "He wouldn't have brought you or Zane into this family if he wasn't sure. Alex has to be 100% sure he wants something before he acts." She let go of Mia's hands and brought her in, hugging her tight. "You're Alex's first real relationship." She took a step back and cupped Mia's face. "I think he'd given up on finding a woman he wanted to settle down with. I knew from the moment I saw you that you would be amazing. Because if Alex chose you, I knew you'd have to have passed a very thorough list." She chuckled and stroked Mia's cheek. "I've never seen Alex look at anyone the way he does you." Her smile was so bright it was almost blinding. "His years undercover turned him hard, but you changed him. Thank you." "Oh, God." Mia's stomach dropped, and she groaned. "No, don't thank me. You're wrong." She stumbled back away from Alex's mother. "Alex doesn't want me. Today's the first time he's introduced me to his friends, and even then, I did the introduction. We've seen his coworkers out, and the same thing happened. That isn't the action of the man you described." Mia took a deep breath in and slowly let it out. "I will be forever grateful for all he and you have done. I'm happy to be his friend and have him adopt Zane. But the last couple of weeks have made it clear that Alex and I are just meant to be friends and nothing more." Mia gathered Catherine's hands in her own and squeezed them. Mia hoped she convinced Catherine. She didn't want any more heartbreak in her life. And one thing that was for sure, after listening to Catherine, Mia knew Alex was going to break her heart. And if he did, she'd never be able to put it back together this time. Mia could handle and had handled a lot of things in life, like being disowned by her parents, the people who should have loved her unconditionally, being dumped by her baby daddy, kicked out of her school, and learning to do everything on her own. But She would have been torn apart if Alex broke her, because she wouldn't just lose him. She'd lose his family, and Zane would lose everything he deserved. Catherine let go of Mia's hands, wrapped her arm around her, and guided her toward the house. Oh, honey, I love you no matter what. Let everything settle and my boy get used to having someone to love. And I promise you, he'll stop acting like an idiot. She held Mia tight and wouldn't let her retreat as she walked back into the house. Come on, let's go do the cake and give that son of mine his own son. He'd fucked up again. His father yelling for everyone to gather at the table had him shaking his head out of his sulking. Gather around. I want to wish my son a happy birthday. I'm proud of all my children, but Alex is my oldest, and the work he's done with the police, and how he treats our family is remarkable. I'm blessed to have him as my son. Happy birthday, Alex. I love you. Everyone raise your glass and help me wish Alex a happy birthday. Everyone raised their glasses. Happy birthday! His mother spoke up next. Thank you all for coming. We have all been busy this last couple of weeks getting this party ready. But we have also been helping get a gift ready for you, my amazing son. Come here, Zane. Zane came through the crowd beaming. Both his dimples showed. He was the most adorable child ever. He held a thin present in his hand. Zane handed it to him. Mummy asked me something a long time ago nows. Everyone laughed around him. She said that Yuza wants to be my daddy. She asked it if I wanted that. He nodded his head like crazy. I so do. He looked down at the present in Alex's hands. Open it. He helped Alex rip the paper off the present, and Alex saw a clear folder with a document inside. Alex opened the folder and lifted out the papers and read them. It was the papers all drawn up and ready to adopt Zane. All he had to do was sign, and Zane was his. Alex searched for Mia and found her next to his parents, clutching his mother. She smiled at him. Alex looked back at Zane. His heart thudded, and butterflies fluttered in his stomach. I love you, little buddy. Are you sure you want me as your daddy? Zane threw himself at him and clung on. I loves you so much. Yes, I wants you to be my daddy. I wants to be a Douglas. A pen appeared to his right, and he took it. He placed the papers on the table and signed the documents. Once everything was signed, he held the papers up in one hand and grabbed his son with the other. I'd like you all to meet my son, Zane Douglas, the best birthday present ever. Alex looked to Mia. Thank you. Alex's mother, sister, Mia, and even his dad and brothers were teary-eyed. Everyone cheered. Alex clutched onto him tight, and he felt like the richest, most luckiest man in the world. Can I call you Daddy now? Alex wasn't even embarrassed when tears slid down his cheek, and his voice came out in a hoarse whisper. Yes, I am your dad. Daddy, Pa, or Father. Whatever you want to call me, buddy. Zane nodded. I loves yous, Daddy. Happy birthday. Alex didn't remember much after that. Owen took the paperwork and told Alex he'd send it off on Monday and make a rush on having everything back so they could change the birth certificate and other documents. Zane didn't leave his side. Alex knew right now, surrounded by his friends, family, and loved ones, he was the luckiest, richest man in the world. Meeting the woman he'd fallen for, he grabbed Mia and kissed her. She seemed startled at first, and then sank into the kiss. It was Zane, who was still in his other arm, that had him easing away. Oh, gross. They're kissing again. They're always kissing, Zane mumbled. Everyone around them laughed. Chapter 7. When Alex had kissed her in front of everyone at his birthday party, Mia's promise to distance herself and resist Alex vanished. She couldn't do it and didn't want to. She knew they would have to talk, but that could wait for another day. After the party, Alex changed back to the guy she originally met, the man he was when they were alone. It had been a week since the party, and Mia was hesitant to talk to him. She was scared that if she brought up her fears, the talk could backfire on her. She knew they'd have to talk soon, though, because she got her cast off next week and wouldn't need to stay at Alex's anymore. Strange. She didn't call it his house, or usually think of it as his. She thought of it as home, and that terrified her. Today was a rare day. Since the party, there had been an influx of Alex's friends coming to visit. Mia couldn't get rid of them. Some seemed to live at the house now. She had never cooked so much food in her life. It was game day, which meant all the Douglases went to Chad's rugby match this afternoon. Zane had stayed at Alex's parents' house last night, so she and Alex were alone for the first time in weeks. It was the perfect time to have the talk they needed. Mia hesitated, though. It was nice snuggling in bed. She drew lazy circles on his chest and breathed in his masculine scent. He played with her hair, twirling and twisting it around his fingers. The slight pull every now and then was nice. Move in with me. The rubble of his voice sent warmth through her. Get rid of your apartment. Live with me. Easing up, she hugged her legs to her chest and stared down at him. That's a huge step, Alex. Are you ready for that? I wouldn't have asked if I wasn't. Here was her chance. She had to say what she needed to. I know I live with you now, but it will be different once I don't have my apartment to fall back on. I haven't had much of a choice the last couple of weeks. This week, you've been awesome, and you've always been amazing when we're alone. But before this week, you were kind of an ass to me when it came to certain things like acknowledging me to your friends and coworkers. It made me wonder if you're ashamed of me. If I'm really telling the truth, you still haven't introduced me to your friends as your girlfriend. I introduced myself to your friends, and I didn't even introduce myself as your anything. Mia was on a roll now, letting go of her legs. She knelt and backed up on the bed. I like you, Alex. She loved him, but she wasn't going to tell him that, especially now. But I don't like how you make me feel sometimes. She sighed and got off the bed. If you can't tell your own friends, who have practically moved themselves in here the last week, that we're together, then I'm leaving next week when I get my cast off, and I think we should just be friends, no benefits. She crossed her arms over her chest and glared at Alex. Alex sat up, looking dazed at her rant. What on earth, Mia? What the hell was all that? Taking a calming breath, she slowly let it out, telling herself not to cry. Just what it was. We needed to have this talk, and I've been putting it off. Plus, we've had an endless amount of guests. It's nice to know your friends love my food at least. Am I not good enough to be known as your girlfriend? Am I too young, too stupid, not pretty enough? They probably think that I'm not just your baby mama, but your chef, too. The stupid tears fell, and Mia couldn't stop them. I didn't want this. You chased me. She frantically wiped the tears and backed away as Alex got off the bed and stalked toward her. Her back hit the wall, and she debated if she could crawl to the exit to get away. Alex boxed her in, his hand settling on either side of her face. I'm sorry, he said, and she choked on a sob. I know what I'm about to say is no excuse, but I'm sorry. She felt her stomach sink. This was it. This was where he would shatter her heart into a million pieces. I've never really been in a relationship before. I've never felt the need, and truthfully, you're the first woman who made me work for you to give me a chance. And now that I think about it, you only did because you got hurt. He turned bright red. It was so cute. I fell in love with Zane instantly. You, though. He stroked her cheek. Mia felt like her heart was going to beat out of her chest. You. I lusted over for weeks. You. I couldn't stop thinking about until it drove me crazy. You. The more time I spent with you, I fell a little more in lust with everything I learned about you. That lust soon turned into something else I realized. He kissed her forehead and lingered. I was, having difficulty with our age difference, and with what others think. But I've learned that I'm an idiot and a huge ass, because I shouldn't care what others think. The other people whose thoughts should matter are you and me. My own family doesn't care. My mother and father love you, and my brothers and sister adore you. I'm sorry, Mia. I never meant or wanted you to feel anything other than beautiful, smart, and appreciated in every way. Please, forgive me. Mia fell even more in love with Alex. How could she not forgive him? I forgive you, she whispered. He cupped her face, and his thumb glided over her bottom lip. Promise me from now on that if anything like this happens, you won't wait until it gets like this before you talk to me about it. Tell me what you want, or what I've done wrong. He winked. I'll do the same with you, with all the things you do wrong. Hey! Mia shoved him and maneuvered out of his cage. Zoe, I'm going to shout from the rooftop that you're my girlfriend. Are you going to move in with me? She should say no. They hadn't been together for very long, and there wasn't just Mia to think about in their relationship. She had Zane. This affected him. So why did she find herself saying, yes, I'll move in with you? Mia spent her week packing up her apartment. She gave her 2 weeks' notice to the real estate, and this morning, Lachlan, Owen, Chad, Alex, and their father Charles had spent their Saturday morning moving her into Alex's. On Monday, she got her cast off and intended to spend the rest of the week cleaning the apartment. While the men had been hard at work moving her things in, most of her furniture was given to charity. She'd been cooking up a storm to say thank you. You do know, if you keep cooking like this house will always be full, Stephanie, Alex's sister, said, before shoving a Tim Tam cupcake in her mouth. She moaned and grabbed another cupcake. Mia liked Stephanie. Steph enjoyed her cooking, and Mia loved that Alex devoured everything she made. It made her feel useful. I don't mind. I'm getting used to having a full house lately, and I like it. Steph went for another cupcake. If you eat like that, you won't want the roast chicken and lamb I've been cooking. It's ready now. I'm just waiting for the guys to arrive and your mother with the kids and Lana. Steph moved away from the cupcakes. The guys are back. They're downstairs in the man cave. She rolled her eyes. I'll go tell them to wash up and get their asses up here. Mom should be here any minute. Mia nodded. Thanks, Steph. Stephanie disappeared, and Mia got the gravy ready and the meats out to rest. She grabbed a couple of the potatoes for the kids, so they'd be cool, and put the others back in the oven and turned it up to make them crispy. Turning back to the stove, she smiled when she heard her son yell, Daddy! Mommy! I's at home! Zane loved having a dad, and Alex was the best. If Mia was honest, this last week she'd become a little jealous. Zane didn't want Mia to do anything anymore. Daddy had to do it. So all week, when he hadn't been working, Alex had done morning wake-up, breakfast, taking to daycare if it was his day to go. And he also did bath time, followed by reading and cuddles in the bed. Mia still got cuddles and kisses before bed, but now Alex, or Daddy to Zane, had to do it too. Zane came running into the kitchen and looked around. He came up and gave a quick hug to her and then took off. Daddy! Daddy, where are shoes? Lana came waddling in, holding Olivia's hand. She was almost 8 months pregnant. I've been replaced, Mia moaned. Lana laughed. I'd like to say it will ease with time, but... She nodded down to Olivia and shook her head. You can never be replaced. Catherine came into the kitchen and started getting out bowls and dishes for food to be put on. She placed them on the counter, then went over to Mia and hugged her. This all looks wonderful and smells amazing. Thank you for doing this. This is nothing. It's the least I can do for everyone's help. Food? Oh, heaven. Mia's cooking. Lachlan came in and got a knife and tried to get some of the meat. Catherine smacked her son's hand. Go wash your hands and make yourself useful by setting the table. Lachlan groaned but did as Catherine told him. Stephanie stirred the gravy while Mia got the roast potatoes out. Alex came into the kitchen with Zane in one arm, his other arm wrapped around her waist, and he leaned down, pressing his lips to her head. Hey, sweetheart, want me to carve? Closing her eyes for a moment, she looked back against his hard chest and basked in his support. She opened her eyes, twisted, and gazed up at him. Yes, please. Come here, little guy. Steph grabbed Zane from Alex and hugged him, kissing both his cheeks before settling him on her hip. Let's go wash up, and then show me your special table. I wish I got to eat at the special table with you and Olivia. Mia started putting the plates filled with the corn on the cob and other veggies on the table. Lachlan was sitting at the table, and Owen was across from him. Catherine came out with 2 lots of potatoes, one's cooked in the meat juices, and another without. Mia was sure she saw drool slip from the guys' mouths as the bowls were sat in the middle. Mia went and gathered the rest with Catherine's help. The table was full with the Douglas family sitting around it. Mia had always wanted a big family. She'd been an only child, and it could be lonely. She loved how big Alex's family was and how close they all were. They insisted she sit at the head of the table, as she'd been the one to make all the food. The men didn't talk much, mostly just grunted and moaned while they were eating. Mia didn't mind the quiet. She was surprised when Catherine spoke. Now that you have the help, Are you going to enroll in university? I know mid-semester starts in a couple of weeks, but I'm sure you could still get into an open foundation. Shocked by her question, Mia didn't respond right away. She'd always wanted to go to uni, but she never thought it possible, not with her income and having no help or many people to fall back on to help with Zane. She had Beth, but she couldn't ask too much of her friend. Going to university would be a lot of time and focus she would need away from Zane and a job. She'd hoped she'd be able to go to university once Zane started primary school. Now that she had Alex and his family, could she go to uni? She shook her head. No. Alex and the Douglases had already done so much for her. She couldn't and wouldn't ask for more of them. No. Next week I'm going to go into work and see if they can start rostering me back on. The whole table fell quiet. The only noise that could be heard was Olivia and Zane chatting to each other at the kids' table. Why? It was Stephanie who broke the silence. Why what? Mia wondered what Steph meant. Stephanie shrugged. Why are you going back to work? So I can contribute to the bills and buy Zane the things he needs. You contribute now. I'd be happy if you went back to university. I can help out more with Zane, and I'm sure Mom and Dad would love to help. Alex smiled at her and reached over and squeezed her thigh. You already do enough, and I'm sure Catherine and Charles want to enjoy retirement and not have to look after my son. Our son, Alex corrected. Mia nodded. It was taking some getting used to remembering Alex was Zane's father now. Charles chuckled. I've been retired for over 10 years. We had 9 years of pre-grandkids time. We traveled a lot then. I don't want to travel anymore. I want to spend time with my grandbabies and enjoy them. I've been waiting for grandbabies a long time, Alex's mother added. Mia looked around the table for help, but found none. They have your kids. They're off my back about finding a man and settling down. Barf! Stephanie made a gaggy noise. I say go to uni. Pop out some more kids in between. The more grandkids you and Lana have, the more we're left alone. Lachlan winked at Mia. Hear, hear. Owen raised his glass in agreement with Lachlan. Mia felt hot. She was probably as red as a tomato. She and Alex hadn't even been dating a year, and more children was being discussed. She may have gotten knocked up as a teen, but she learned her lesson and was on the pill. I have already put you all out so much. I couldn't ask more from you all. Why not? Lachlan asked. Yeah, you can. Chad piped in. I love the little guy. He's no problem. Owen added. We love having our grandbaby. Zane is an angel, Catherine said. I shouldn't even have to add to this. You know I love Zane. Steph raised her brow. Mia looked at Alex to see him watching her. Sweetheart, he's my son. I'd do anything for him. Tears slid down her face. Mia's heart was so full of love, she thought it might burst. I just feel like all I ever do is take from you. I wouldn't worry too much about thinking we're doing too much for you. You're going to pay us back tenfold when Alex is 80 and you're only in your 60s. Everyone groaned around Mia. I mean, my brother did good. He looks after you now, gives you the good life, and then, when he's old and decrepit, you're the one that's wiping his ass and— Lachlan Douglas! You quit that talk right now! Oh, shit. Mom used his full name, whispered Chad. Alex growled and gave a death glare to Lachlan. Mia couldn't help herself. She burst out in fits of laughter. Of course, Lachlan diffused the situation. Mia loved his family. Alex slipped his hand into hers and intertwined his fingers, bringing them up to kiss her hand. Closing her eyes, she savored his touch. Warmth seeped through her, and she opened her eyes to stare at dark blue ones. You going to go to uni? Mia nodded. Only if it's okay with you. Alex brushed his lips over hers. Yes, I'm happy for you to go to university. I want you to do whatever you want. All I want is for you to be happy. God, she loved this man. She was going to tell him too. She just wanted the perfect time. Oh, for Christ's sake, brother, I've just eaten, Lachlan moaned. Mia glanced over to see him holding his stomach. All that mushy shit is going to— Lachlan? Don't make me give you another warning. Catherine's stern voice telling off Lachlan had Mia giggling. She beamed at Alex. Looks like I'm going to university. Alex was exhausted. The last couple of weeks had been crazy. Being a dad was demanding, but worth it. He had been so busy he hadn't shaved his head in weeks. Mia didn't seem to mind, though. She had gotten her cast off and spent her days getting ready for university, making sure all the forms were filled out and her finance was ready to pay for tuition. Gary, her old mechanic, had helped her find a new car. Well, it was a 20-year-old car, but it was in good condition. Mia wouldn't let Alex buy her a car, no matter how much he argued. He just finished a double shift and was so tired and disturbed by one of his last confrontations tonight, he didn't even shower before changing out of his uniform. He came straight home. He needed to see his woman and baby boy. Going to Zane's room, Alex opened the door and walked in, just standing there, watching the rise and fall of his little chest. He couldn't believe that this little miracle was his. All children were special. Alex didn't know how long he stood there, staring at the perfect little man before him, but he was sure it was a good hour. How could anyone hurt someone so little, so innocent and reliant on them? His stomach churned as the scene from work flashed before him. He inched closer to the bed and tucked the covers more securely over Zane. "I love you, buddy," he whispered. Suddenly, 2 arms wrapped around his waist, and he jumped out of them ready to defend his kid with his life. He turned to find Mia standing there. He'd been so focused on Zane that he hadn't even heard her come in. Mia slowly raised her hands in the air, her brows furrowed and her lips turned down. "You okay?" He shook his head and gathered his woman against him before leaning down and nuzzling her neck. "I love you. I love you so goddamn much." She gasped and eased back to gaze up at him. Her hand came up and she gently stroked his cheek. "What happened?" Alex moved his face and kissed her hand. She sighed. "Let's get out of here and you can tell me what happened." Alex didn't say anything. He picked her up and carried her to their bedroom, sitting her down before the bed. He stripped her clothes and then his own, and still, without saying a word, he gathered her up and gently laid her on the bed, then lay beside her. Holding her, he stroked her smooth, warm skin and breathed in her scent. He needed her more than he'd ever need anyone. She calmed him. When he felt calm enough to talk, he let out his breath slowly and told her what he could. "I went to a domestic disturbance." He shivered as images of what the assailant had done to the victims flashed through his mind. The shaking worsened at images of the boy, who laid on the floor beaten so badly he was unconscious. They didn't know if he'd wake again. The blood from the woman and child was everywhere. It wasn't the worst I've been to, but I kept seeing you and Zane, and I almost shot the fucking assailant." Alex tipped Mia's chin up and kissed her slowly, gently, savoring it. 3 of us surrounded them, and having the highest rank, I was charged with trying to talk the attacker down. But for the first time in many years, I couldn't think of anything that wasn't threatening. Like, "If you don't stop, I'll shoot you," or "I'm going to count to 2, and if by 1 you don't stop, I'll fucking shoot you." Derek could see I was struggling. The anger was clear on my face, and he took over. Alex sighed. Once the man was cuffed, I may have hit his head and face a couple of times on the floor, and the roof of the car as I was putting him inside. He scrubbed his face. "I'm sure he deserved that and more." Alex chuckled, and he couldn't help himself. Of course she didn't berate him for his behavior in handling the man. Mia was on his side. The guys were all shocked. Derek is busting my balls because I've become an asshole. He said I was a dick before, but now I'm just relentless. She giggled and climbed onto him, straddling his chest. "Oh, you're relentless, all right." She wiggled down him, and her hand circled the base of his length and pumped. He turned hard before her hand even touched his cock. "And I happen to like your dick." Groaning as her smooth hand circled his dick, he stared at the beauty settled between his thighs. She was gorgeous with her long hair, big brown eyes, and petite lips that hovered above the tip of his cock. Her hand pumped while her tongue slipped out and circled the head before she came closer and took him deep into her mouth. The erotic image before him had his lust skyrocketing, and the control he fought to keep in check almost exploded out. Mia's lips circled his cock, her strawberry blonde locks a halo around her, her big brown eyes hooded. Nothing had ever looked so sexy, so alluring. She took him deep, her warm, wet mouth heaven around him as her tongue helped suck. She hollowed her cheeks and sucked hard as she sank down over him as much as she could. Not able to hold back, he grabbed her hair, gripping it to guide her. He pushed her down, getting her to take a little more of him each time. Closing his eyes and enjoying the tingling building passion, he wrapped her hair around his hand and pulled her up, yanking tight, before pushing her down again. She made a choking noise, and Alex pulled her back and snapped his eyes open to help his control. "Wow, you're so damn hot. Come here," he moaned. Dragging her closer, he smashed his mouth to hers. Untangling her hair from his hands, he picked her up and moved them back on the bed, kissing her until she lay beneath him again. Alex knelt between her spread legs and watched his hand trail down her body and come to rest between her thighs. His fingers parted her folds and pushed into her, and she arched into his touch, panting and moaning. "Yes. Oh, Alex, go deeper. More. Alex, please give me more." Alex loved how responsive Mia was to him. "Be patient, sweetheart. I'll give you just what you need." He rubbed her nub with one hand and added another finger, driving them deep. She meowed and twisted down onto him. He felt her body tensing, squeezing and freezing up tight, getting closer as her pleasure built. "Oh, please, Alex, I need to come. Make me come." Her begging had his lust reaching amazing new heights, and he growled with need as he leaned down, sucking her nipple into his mouth. He switched, doing the same to the other. Needing balance, his hand left her nub and held his weight. Craving to see her come, he added a third finger and pumped faster as he gave a tiny nip to the end of her nipple. Mia screeched, her body arching off the bed, and he watched as rapture covered her gorgeous face. Her eyes flashed a darker brown and swirled with bliss. Her mouth opened in O, and her head fell back. Beneath him, her body trembled, and he couldn't help the smirk he knew covered his face at what he'd done to her. Alex stared at his woman. She was so sexy, so beautiful, with hooded eyes and her body relaxed and satisfied. Bringing his coated fingers to his mouth, he sucked on her essences. God, he loved how wet she was. Crawling up her smooth, softly rounded body, he kissed her lips and he ravished her. Aligning the tip of his cock to her pussy, he plunged in, basking at her tight clasp around him. Her orgasm made her so tight it was almost painful. Mia squirmed as he pushed balls deep, her mouth leaving his and her eyes opening wide. Taking a deep breath, he came almost all the way out before he propelled in hard this time. Mia cried out, her legs come around him, and her heels dug into his ass. He pulled out and drove back in. Mia's scream was deafening as she clutched him. Shit, had he hurt her? He needed to let out his frustration and anger from the day. Fuck, he hoped he hadn't hurt her. He paused, seated to the hilt. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "Why? That felt amazing. Do it again." His body tensed, and he gritted his teeth, making sure he stayed still so he could talk to her. "I don't want to hurt you. I'm wound up tight." He eased out, but she grabbed his shoulders and held on to them. "No, you weren't hurting me. That felt so good. Please, I can take it." She pouted up at him. "I promise. If you get too rough, I'll tell you." Alex hesitated. He was big, and Mia was only a little thing, and she hadn't that long ago recovered from the crash. He slipped further out just so the tip of his dick sat at her entrance. "I think it's best if I finish myself and help you find release again. I've never heard you scream like that." "No, no, no, no," she chanted. She used the heels of her feet, pushing on his ass to ease him back into her, and caught his gaze. "How about a safe word?" Alex hesitated, not saying anything. "How about cheese? If I say that, we stop." Her pleading gaze had Alex caving. They could do this. He nodded, and Mia lifted off the bed and threw her arms around him and captured his mouth, seeking his cock deep, He paused, savoring her pussy gripping him tight. Mia stopped their kiss, and she panted. Please, let go. I can handle it. Fuck. Okay, hold on to the headboard. Mia nodded, and he moved them so she could reach the headboard, and she eased down and gripped it. Alex lifted her hips up and thrust deep. Pulling out, he slammed into her, letting his frustration out. Mia squealed, but did her best to lift her hips to drive him deep. He gritted his teeth and closed his eyes as her pussy clenched his cock in a vice-like grip, driving him insane. Opening his eyes, he stared down at Mia's bouncing tits and watched his cock disappear inside her. Darting his gaze back up, he stared at her pleasure-filled face. I'm so fucking crazy about you. He panted as he drove into her like a madman. He was more than crazy about her. He loved her. She gave him everything he needed and more. I love you. Her reply was a drawn-out groan. Wanting to be deeper, he pulled out and faced her toward the mirrored wardrobes and placed her so she was on all fours. He yanked her ass up in the air and spread her cheeks before driving his dick into her pussy. Mia screamed and thrust herself back against him, sinking him so fucking deep. Yes, 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 she yelled. Alex looked up and groaned as he saw the reflection in the mirror. Her hair fell everywhere, and Alex gathered it up and wound it around his hand, and he yanked. Her ass rose higher, and Alex stared at the mirror, transfixed, as he watched himself fuck Mia. Her tits swayed and bounced, and Mia gripped the comforter with one hand, while the other held the edge of the bedside drawers. Her eyes were closed, but the look of rapture on her face was unmistakable in the open mouth, heaving chest, and her pushing back against him. Oh, yes, Alex. Yes, yes. Alex eased out and rammed back in, tightening his grip on her hair. Fill me up. Give it to me harder, Mia yelled. Yanking on her hair, he pulled out and propelled back home. That's it, she hissed. She opened her eyes, and the dark orbs caught his in the reflection of the mirror. Alex, Alex, deeper, harder. Holy shit. She was becoming so bossy, and he gritted his teeth and chanted over and over in his head. Don't come, don't come. She was so goddamn sexy. Alex, oh Alex, come deep inside me. He grunted. Fuck. He loved his name on her lips. Her dirty talk was driving him insane, and he knew he'd give her what she was asking for soon. But he needed her to come first. On a growl, he pulled her back so she was on the edge of the bed, and he could stand. He lifted her ass and reached around to play with her clit. Mia cried out and arched into him, closing her eyes again and begging for more. She was so perfect, taking everything he was giving her and asking for more. Holding her hair tight, he leaned over and drove in deep and flicked her clit and then pressed down on it. Open your eyes. I want to see what I'm doing to you. I want to watch you watch yourself as you come around my cock. As he pistoned into her, she opened her eyes and moaned. Her pussy walls pulsed, and her ass cheeks squeezed together. Mia screamed as he pounded into her and watched. Her pussy started to quiver and tighten around him, and knowing she was coming, he finally let himself go with one final thrust. Mia, he roared. His cum shot from his body, filling her up. Sated, he let go of her hair, eased out, and carefully moved them onto the bed, spooning her in a hug. I love you. This time, when she didn't answer, Alex worried that maybe Mia wasn't as invested in their relationship as he was. Today, Mia was spending the day with Zane and Alex. Zane had swimming this morning, and then they were going to the park and having a picnic. Zane cheered in the back when they pulled up to the swimming pool. He loved swimming, and Mia was eager to see his process. She'd missed over the last month. Mia got out of the car and went to get Zane out, but he refused her help. He wanted his daddy to get him. No, Daddy get me. Easing back, Mia raised her hands in surrender. She glared at Alex as he got Zane out of his seat. I give up. I'm not doing anything for my baby when you're around. I'm never good enough. Alex winked at her. I'm a novelty right now, sweetheart. Mia followed behind them, staring at Alex's tight ass. She never knew she was an ass woman until she met the Douglases. She studied all their asses, and by far, Alex had the best. It was high and round. She squeezed it enough to know every curve on the perfect globes. She was so busy looking at it, she stumbled on the steps into the pool entrance. Alex chuckled, turned, and handed her the towel bag. She felt her cheeks heat. He knew she was staring. Straightening her dress, she went over to the smaller pool and sat on a chair against the wall. Mia giggled as the women filed out of the change rooms. They all looked amazing. Beth, her friend, was the only woman who didn't have a slim-fitting new swimsuit and hadn't lost weight. Not that Beth didn't look amazing, but she wasn't trying hard to impress. Over half the mothers in the swimming class were single. The Douglas men were prime meat. Beth waved as she entered the water. Landon gave an enthusiastic wave, too, and yelled, "Mia! Mia, I missed you!" "I missed you, too. I can't wait to see how good you and Zane are." Landon nodded frantically, then squealed, "Zane!" Mia turned and smiled when she saw Zane in Lachlan's arms and Olivia in Alex's. Mia watched them walking to the pool. Glancing around, she saw she wasn't the only one staring at the perfect specimens. All the women were watching the toned bodies as they flexed, walking toward the pool, and then sank into the water with the children on their hips. Mia had never felt like a lucky woman, but right now, she knew she was. One of those gorgeous men was hers, and to her, he was the best one of the lot. For once in her life, she had what other women wanted, what other women desired. Sitting up in her seat, she studied the man she'd fallen for. He was tall but graceful, strong but gentle, powerful but caring, and loyal and loving. He was too good to be true. Could she trust him with her heart? If she told him she loved him, would he still love her back? Alex's whole focus was on his niece. Mia glanced over to see Lachlan was much the same, solely focused on Zane. Mia had hit the jackpot with the Douglas family. She'd always wanted siblings, and the Douglases were her dream come true. But could she trust her love? Would they love her back, or would they abandon her too? Mia had fallen in love with not just Alex, but his family. Mia was off. After swimming, she seemed in a daze. Something was wrong. Alex wondered if it had to do with her feelings for him. He told her he loved her more than once now, and she hadn't said it once. He knew she loved him, but he wanted to hear the words. Mia wasn't a person who loved easily, and you had to earn her love. He knew she loved him when she let him become Zane's father. Zane was her greatest treasure, and she would give him anything and everything. Alex watched Zane as he played on the equipment, sliding down the slides and climbing up the rope. He turned the wheel on the pirate ship. Alex played as sea monster until Mia called them over to the table. While Zane munched on his food and played on the iPad Alex's parents had bought him, Alex used his chance to find out what was bothering Mia. "Are you worried about university?" Mia shook her head. "No, I'm actually really excited." She smiled. "Are you nervous about me going to university?" "Why would I be nervous?" She shrugged. "It'll take a lot of my time. I won't be around to make breakfast, lunch, and dinner. I won't be able to have the house spotless when you come home. Things will change." "Is that all you think I need or want from you?" Jesus. No wonder she hadn't told him she loved him. She thought he needed her as his maid. She didn't reply. "I did all that while you were in the hospital. I don't need you for any of that." Mia raised an eyebrow. "What do you need me for?" For fuck's sake, was he really that bad at showing her what he needed her for? What he wanted from her? "All I want from you is to be happy." "Really?" He stood and paced back and forth. "No, I want you to love me too." Mia stared at him for a moment, like she was assessing what he'd said, before she gave a brisk nod and then turned her attention back to Zane. She'd fucked up. For the last couple of days, Alex had given up. She'd never seen the defeated look in his eyes. He hadn't slept in their bed, his bed, and she hated it. He only came home to be with Zane. Otherwise, she didn't see him. She was scared. She had to fix it. Catherine and Charles had Zane, and Alex was due home any moment. Mia sat waiting in her little black dress, with her makeup and hair done. When the minutes turned to an hour, and then the hour turned into 2, she knew where she had to go. She called a cab and waited. When she heard the taxi honk, she took a calming breath in and slowly let it out as she stood and got her bag and keys. The taxi ride wasn't long. Magoo's pub wasn't far, only a 15-minute drive. The taxi dropped her off, but Mia stood out in front of the building, terrified to go in. She would do it for Alex, though. Stiffening her spine, she walked through the pub doors and searched for Alex. She found him with his workmates in the corner with a half-drunk beer. Making her way over to him, she watched his manner. Anyone who didn't know him would think he was happy, relaxed. But Mia knew him better. His shoulders were hunched just a bit too much. His eyes didn't stay on his friends when they spoke, and to top it off, he ran his hand over his head. That was another thing he'd done these last days. He'd shaved his head. Mia hated it because it made him look younger than he already did, and it suited him so much so that she had to hold herself back from jumping his bones every time he entered the room. Alex was the first to see her, and a smile spread over his face for a split second before he seemed to realize something, and it disappeared. Speeding up her pace, she was 2 tables away when a tall body stepped in front of her. "Hey there, gorgeous. I saw you as soon as you came in." The blond man before her held out his hand. "My name is Marcus." Mia stared at his hand and took a step back. "I'm Mia. If you'll excuse me, I'm here with someone." She moved to the side and went toward Alex. Marcus's hand snaked out and grabbed her arm, stopping her. "Wait. Come talk to me, Mia. You don't have to lie. I watched you come through that door on your own." Snatching her arm out of his grasp, she backed away from him. "No, thank you. I'm meeting my boyfriend." Marcus smirked down at her, and she shivered. And not the good kind. She didn't like this guy. "If you were my girlfriend, I wouldn't let you come into this dive by yourself. You're much too pretty." Thanks?" She kept backing up, trying to get closer to Alex. She turned her head and searched for Alex, but didn't see him. Crap. She really needed him now. Twisting back to Marcus, she stumbled into a table when she found him almost on top of her. Right now, she wished she'd stayed home and waited for Alex. "I'm flattered, but I really am here for my boyfriend." Straightening herself, she glared at Marcus. "I'm not interested in you." She weaved around Marcus, and this time, when he grabbed her arm, she sighed in relief when she heard. "I believe Mia told you she's not interested. Let her go now." There was no mistaking the deadly threat in Alex's voice. Marcus dropped her arm so fast, she'd have thought she was on fire. Mia threw herself at Alex, wrapping her arms around him. She didn't intend to let him go, especially not in this pub. This is the girl." Marcus's voice was high. "But she's beautiful. Yes, she is." Mia's cheeks heated and Alex smirked. "Not what you expected, was it, Marcus?" Alex asked. Marcus growled and pushed past Alex, nudging him. She took a step back. "What's up with him? Do you know him?" Alex threaded his fingers through hers. "Unfortunately, yes. He's on the force, and he's an asshole." She nodded. "Yes, he is. Next time I'm here, please don't leave me." Alex smiled, and she melted against him. She loved his smile. He leaned down, and his lips brushed the tip of her ear. "You look beautiful." "Thank you. I missed you." "You did?" He raised his eyebrow. "Yes. Your parents have Zane," she whispered. Alex turned to his work friends. "Thanks for the beers, but we'll see you later." Before Mia could even acknowledge Alex's friends, he dragged her away. But she heard their chuckles. She turned as he pulled her to the exit. "Bye," she waved, unable to help the grin that spread over her face. She loved Alex, and this was her chance to fix her mistake. She had to tell him everything. She got in his car, and he started it. They drove in silence for a while, until she knew they had to talk. Now. She had to do it now before they got home. "I'm scared," she blurted. "I'm scared that once you know me, you'll leave me just like everyone else who's loved me, or should. What if you find out I'm not what you want, what you need? You're perfect." He chuckled. "I'm far from perfect." She shook her head. "No, you're perfect. You're what most women dream of in a man. You're too good to be true." He laughed, a deep belly laugh. "I have no idea what I'm doing half the time. I am so far from perfect it's not funny. I've been focused on my career for years.
And when I slowed down and took a look at life, I realized what I was missing. The problem was the women I met before you I couldn't stand. Well, for longer than a night or two. You're the sweetest person I've ever met. Your tough act when I first introduced myself was just that, an act. His hand came over and squeezed her thigh. I can't promise you that I'll never leave you, because my job is dangerous and I can't always control what happens to me. But I can promise you that I won't willingly leave you. He sighed loudly. I don't just love you because you cook and clean. I love you because you listen to me. You put up with all my moods, good and bad. And you've taken my family in and not only given them Zane, but yourself as well. I love you because of your heart, and because when you hug me, you hold me tight like you never want to let me go. I love you because you're you, my Mia. He pulled into their street. Mia couldn't stop the tears from falling. Perfect, she whispered. To me, you're perfect. She knew in that moment that she wouldn't let Alex go, even if he wanted to. She'd fight for them, for him. He drove into the garage and parked. She got out of the car, and before he even got to the stairs, she jumped on him, wrapped her legs around his waist and her arms around his neck. Her lips captured his, and she poured everything she had into the kiss, showing without saying how much she loved him. Alex's hand rested on her ass and squeezed her globes as she gyrated against him. His fingers inched down to the hem of her dress, and he pushed it up higher. He backed them up against the door to upstairs. He tore his mouth from her and growled, "Panties off now." She shivered at the deep, gravelly sound of his voice. Damn, his voice alone turned her on. She slid down his body and stood back. Slowly, she reached down and hooked her fingers into her panties and eased them down before flinging them off. She watched as he attacked his clothes, ripping and tugging to get them off. She was so focused on him, she almost forgot to take her dress off. She reached around for the zipper but froze at Alex's husky command. Keep the dress and heels on. Before her hand had even came back down, Alex was on her again. He picked her up and backed her against the door. She was so turned on, her breathing came out in gasps. His fingers glided up her thighs. It felt like years had passed since he touched her. Her body lit on fire at his touch, and she spread her legs further apart and leaned against the door, trying to give it some of her weight. He sunk down to the floor. He kissed his way up her legs until she was weak-kneed, and his head disappeared beneath her dress, and she felt his warm breath on her. One thick, callous finger entered her, and she reached out for an anchor, frustrated when she found none, and she squealed and tried spreading her legs further apart. His hand stopped her, coming to rest on her ass and bringing her forward, so she smashed her pussy against his face. He sucked her clit into his warm mouth, and she knew she wasn't going to last long. This was so hot. He added another digit and pumped them in and out faster and faster. She moved, grinding herself against him, now searching for the explosion that was on the horizon. His teeth grazed her clit, heightening her pleasure. Her knee started wobbling as he scissored his fingers. She closed her eyes, overwhelmed with all the sensations bombarding her. He nipped at her clit, and she exploded. The inferno that had built combusted, and she fell apart, screaming his name over and over. Alex! Alex! Oh, Alex! Alex sucked and licked until he wrung every last drop of orgasm out of her. She opened her eyes and watched the sexy smirk on his face as he made his way back up her body, which had a grin of delight spreading over her own. She loved what this man did to her. She watched his muscles flex and saw his long, thick cock bounce as he lifted her. She wrapped her legs around him, groaning as she felt the tip of his cock spread her nether lips and tease her sensitive clit before pushing his way home. She stared into the dark blue swirling pools of passion. I love you, Mia. His mouth took hers before she could respond, telling him she felt the same way. She could taste herself on him, but it only heightened her building desire. Wrapping her hands around his back, she held on as he drove into her over and over, giving her the powerful man she needed. Her back hit the door with each thrust, and the noise added to the coil that was getting tighter and tighter with each slam into her. She reached for the door handle and gripped it with one hand and held on for dear life. Lifting her legs, she tried helping, pushing up to meet him each time he propelled into her. Panting hard and needing air, she tore her mouth from his and drew in deep breaths. Alex grunted and her body tensed, coiling tight, ready to unwind. She was so close and knew just what she needed to let go. Mia watched Alex as he gritted his teeth and pounded into her. She loved watching the effect she had on him. It was the hottest thing ever. It turned her on beyond anything and built her tension so high she was close to the edge, about to explode. Circling his toned ass with her high-heeled shoes, she dug the heels into his ass, and he pushed into her so deep she swore she saw stars as her body tensed, and then broke into 1,000 tiny pieces as she came hard. "Holy fuck!" Alex yelled as he drove into her one more time on a moan and let himself go. He came to rest on her, and she was surprised he could stand after that. "That was amazing," he moaned. Yes, it was. She slowly eased her legs down to the ground and stayed still for a moment to get her bearings. Alex groaned and slipped out of her. He kissed her forehead, then turned and lifted his pants and got his keys. Mia let go of the door handle, surprised to find she still gripped it, and Alex opened the door, starting to make her way up the stairs. She squealed happily when Alex picked her up and raced up them and then to the next lot of stairs and took them straight to their room. He gently laid her on the bed and joined her. "Thanks for telling me." Mia clutched his arm, secured around her. "Thanks for listening. I'm sorry I didn't tell you about it earlier." His chin rested on her head. "I'm sorry I did what you're scared of the most. I shouldn't have stayed away." Mia didn't know how long they laid like that before she fell asleep, happy for the first time in a week. Now, the only thing she needed, no, wanted, to tell Alex how much she loved him. Chapter 8. Mia had started university the previous week. She'd been so excited and worried about how Zane would take her being away from him that she phoned the preschool, Alex, and his mother almost every couple of hours. This was her second week at university, and Alex had convinced her that after midday, when he got off work, she would turn off her phone and he would deal with any parental issues. Alex had barely finished work when he received the phone call from the preschool, telling him that an older couple was at the school, claiming to be Zane's grandparents. They were insisting that they had a right to see him and had visitation. Melissa, the director of the preschool, told Alex that they even had a lawyer with them. Melissa informed him before she gotten a hold of him she'd spoken with his mother, Catherine, and that she was on her way to the school. He told Melissa not to bother Mia and that he would deal with it. But Melissa said she already tried to contact Mia, but she couldn't get in touch with her and she left a message. Melissa also told him that she called the police for assistance. In that moment, he was so grateful for a lot of things. 1, that he had adopted Zane. 2, that he was a cop. And 3, that he was a Douglas. Because not only did people know the name, thanks to his brothers, but his mother was a woman you never messed with. And if her grandchild was involved, look out. He knew he'd broken a bunch of laws just getting to the preschool. How dare these people come in after not having anything to do with Mia for over 4 years and probably having never even met Zane and think they could just see him? He ran into the preschool and paused at the entry hall. Melissa, Zane, his mother, and his father stood before 3 very well-dressed people, 2 men and 1 woman. He knew the lawyer was there as a scare tactic. Alex could see the resemblance to Mia in the couple. The woman had the same strawberry blonde hair as Mia, but with a lot of white scattered through. The man had the same skin tone and chocolate brown eyes as Mia. Alex didn't care if they were Mia's parents. They had no right to see his son. He narrowed his gaze on them and came up behind his parents. Zane was clutching Alex's father's neck, and as soon as Zane saw Alex, he squealed, "Daddy!" and jumped over to him. Alex opened his arms for his son, caught him, and kissed his forehead. "Hey, buddy, how's Daddy's boy?" Zane burst into tears, and Alex hugged him tight. His anger rose as his son's body trembled. These people had scared him. "Do you want to tell me why you were trying to see my grandson without our permission?" His mother glared at the people before them, and Alex could see his mother was furious.
Before Alex could say anything to Mia's parents, his mother snapped at them. "Do you see what you have done to him? This," his mother waved her hands around, "was unnecessary. If you'd phoned Mia, or even gotten in contact with myself or my son, we would have talked to you about options before you charged in thinking you have rights."
"Ma'am, this child is Zane Lexington, his grandparents, Mr. and Mrs. Lex."
The lawyer spoke up, but Alex was too angry to hear anything from him.
No,
Alex didn't like the lawyer talking. He shouldn't even be there in the first place. The lawyer ignored Alex and continued talking to his parents. Alex didn't want to hear any story about Mia's parents and wanting better for Zane. They'd abandoned Mia and didn't deserve her or his son. He held Zane tighter against his chest.
"His name is Zane Douglas,"
he gritted out, still ignored. Alex heard a familiar voice behind him and turned to see his friend Anthony in uniform with the newer recruit Levi and a woman who was a worker at the center. The woman left when she showed Anthony and Levi the scene. Anthony came up beside him and raised his eyebrow.
"What trouble you in now, Douglas?"
Alex rolled his eyes at the smirk on Anthony's face, but Alex knew once Anthony learned who these people were and what they'd done to Mia, Anthony wouldn't be of any help to them. Anthony adored Mia, and Alex had to practically kick him out of their house to get rid of him. Mrs. Lexington's gaze widened as she looked him up and down, huffed, then mumbled, "Look at what that daughter of mine has stooped to now. A criminal." What the hell? Alex knew he looked a little rough. He wasn't what most people pictured a cop to look like. But in his earlier years, he'd done a lot of undercover work, and the tats and larger build helped. He was in sweats and a tank top, but he'd only just finished work, showered, and then got the phone call. He usually finished work and went home and dozed for a couple of hours before picking Zane up from preschool. He had no reason to dress up or cover his body in tats. He didn't care what these people before him thought of him. Anthony laughed, and so did Levi. But he at least coughed to cover it up. Anthony didn't.
"Ma'am, I suggest you keep quiet until Officer Levi and I have the situation under control. I would also suggest you refrain from calling Detective Douglas a criminal."
"Daddy!" Alex's heart melted every time Zane called him that. Zane came away from his chest and gave a shy wave at Anthony before gazing up at him. "The old man and lady said they knows mummies. They said it that Isa had to go with them. I don't wanna, Daddy. Please it, don't let them takes me." Zane's speech got worse the more hysterical he got. "Listen to him," Mia's mother said. "He's 4 and still not speaking properly, and Mia hasn't done anything about it. She cannot look after this child." Mia's mother spoke to the lawyer, but she said it loud enough for everyone to hear. That was it. Alex had it. This woman had no right to talk like this. He knew Anthony wouldn't do much to stop him. Stepping forward toward Mia's parents, Alex straightened and glowered down at them.
"How dare you? You have no right to say what Mia can and cannot do. Mia is amazing. She has done everything on her own, without even an acknowledgement from you two, and done a damn fine job of it."
He sneered at them.
"I couldn't be more proud of her if I tried. She has done the best with the shitty hand you helped deal her, and has come out of it stronger and better for it. So, if you think you can come here now and try and take over, you have a rude awakening coming to you. I can tell you now that no judge in their right mind would give you rights to my son or any say in Mia's life. Not only is Mia a great mother, who makes sure Zane has everything he needs, she is now a university student, advancing her career so she and Zane can have a better life. She is a well-loved woman and a fantastic mother. I know there isn't a person in this room, besides you three, who doesn't agree with me."
Everyone nodded, and Alex gazed around the room to see his parents, Melissa, the director of the preschool, Anthony, and even Levi agree with him. Alex was shocked, though, when his gaze landed on Mia, who must have come up beside him at some point. She beamed up at him. "God, I love you." She turned her back on her parents and hugged him, Zane between them. She said it. His heart soared, and right now he didn't give a flying fuck about anything else. Wrapping his arm around her, he squeezed her tight and leaned down, kissing her forehead.
"I love you too."
Mia never had felt so drained in her life. She loved uni, but juggling everything was starting to get to her. Alex had convinced her to turn her phone off while she was in afternoon classes, as this month he was on all morning shifts. So he finished at lunchtime and he could get Zane if anything happened to him. So when after her class she turned on her phone to find a message from Melissa, the director of the preschool, telling her that her parents were at the preschool and demanding to see their grandson, she freaked and left university and went straight to Zane. The drive to the preschool had been the longest in her life, as scenarios of what could happen swirled around in her mind. She knew her parents couldn't just take Zane, but that didn't stop the thoughts of them doing it. She was terrified and sick to stomach of what they might say to Zane, or even Alex and his family. Mia didn't want her parents anywhere near Zane or the Douglases. They were way too good to be exposed to them. A million scenes ran through her mind, but what she came upon wasn't what she expected. She'd come in as her mother criticized Zane's speech. How dare that evil witch think she could come in after all this time and criticize her baby? Mia had been about to tell her mother where she could shove what she thought, when Alex spoke and ripped her mother a new one, and told her just what he thought of her and Mia. By the time he finished, Mia's heart was beating so fast, and her stomach was fluttering so much, she had trouble breathing for a moment, as she realized how lucky she was to have Alex, and how much she loved him. She ignored her parents and told the man she loved her feelings for him for the first time. "I love you too," he said loud and clear back. Mia ignored the people around them and stared up into Alex's dark blue eyes. "Thank you. No one has ever done what you've done for me." Alex smiled, and Mia melted against him. She was so lucky. "I would do anything for you, Mia. You and Zane are my whole world." Mia couldn't help the tears that slipped down her cheeks at his beautiful words. "As long as I have breath in my body, I won't let anyone hurt you." He wiped her tears away and brushed his lips over hers. Zane broke their moment on a loud groan. "They're kissing again, Grandma. They're always kissing." Mia turned to see Catherine with tears running down her cheeks, but a huge smile on her face. Anthony and Levi had escorted Mr. and Mrs. Lexington and their lawyer out of the preschool. Later, they found out that Mia's parents had kept tabs on her for years. When they were told she wasn't working and didn't have a flat, they decided to intervene and try to take Zane. They hadn't done their homework right, though, because they didn't know about Alex and his family. Alex had his lawyer send the Lexingtons a formal letter with both his and Mia's signatures on it, stating they wanted them to stay away from Zane, and if they ever saw them or heard about them trying to get access to him, they would take legal action. Mia wrote a letter stating she disowned them and didn't want to see or hear from them again. Any chance she might have given them vanished when they tried to see Zane without her permission. Other than receiving a formal letter from the Lexingtons' lawyer saying they would stay away, they hadn't heard from them, and Alex was glad about that. "Are you ready?" Owen patted his back. Alex looked around him at the pool he hired, the pool where he'd met the two most important people in his life. It was decorated with white, peach, and pink roses. Something called baby's breath, greenery, and orchard vines and fairy lights were weaved around everything. The small field now had tables across it, and where the seat stand had been was now clear and a makeshift dance floor was there. Beth, his mother, sister, and sister-in-law had done an unbelievable job. Now, he just had to surprise the woman he loved and get her not only to agree to marry him, but to do it now. Beth and her sister had taken Mia on a girls' day out and told her they were going out to the theater tonight. His sister had messaged him 5 minutes ago to tell him to keep everyone quiet because they were just around the corner. Alex stood just after the entrance, ready to ask his big question. "Yes, I'm ready." He was. He just hoped Mia said yes. His stomach flip-flopped, his palms were sweaty, and his heart was already beating so fast he was surprised it was still in his chest. "Good luck. We're all here behind you." Owen squeezed his shoulders. "Thanks. Tell everyone it's quiet time. She'll be here any minute now." "Sure, bro." Alex listened as Owen told everyone to stay quiet, and Alex took deep breaths in and out, trying to calm his nerves. It wasn't long in the quiet when he heard the car on the gravel, and then his sister and Beth talking especially loud. "I just want to pop in here and grab something I left behind. The owner said they'd be here," Beth yelled. "They had a work thing here today, and a bunch of people left their cars," his sister Steph yelled. "The owner said they'd stay so people could pick their things up." "Did you two have more than a glass of wine? You're both talking really loud."
Alex could hear Mia's soft voice getting closer.
No, only one.
Beth gave the fakest laugh he'd ever heard, and Alex hoped she hadn't been acting strange all day and giving away that something was happening.
Are you okay, Beth? You've been off all day.
What, me? Beth's voice was so high that he had difficulty not laughing. Now, he also knew who couldn't keep secrets. The gate rattled, and he took a step forward. Alex watched as Mia came through the entrance. She stopped short when she saw everything. She looked stunning in a blue summer dress with silver on the bodice. The hem of the skirt sat just above her knees. Her heels were silver and made her legs look amazing. Her hair was piled on top of her head in an elaborate twist with a couple of curls hanging down to frame her face. The gasp Mia gave was loud, and Alex didn't miss her tremble when she spotted him. Her hands covered her face, and tears slid down her cheeks. Oh shit, she wasn't supposed to cry. Going to her, he wrapped his arms around her and hugged her tightly. Sweetheart, you're not meant to cry.
I'm not. I'm happy. I love you so much.
Loving me makes you cry. Alex eased away and gently wiped her tears. Mia shook her head.
No, it's just, you did this, didn't you?
I had help. I couldn't have done it without my family and Beth. Mia nodded and beamed up at him. Alex loved her smile, watching as her eyes light up and her face transformed from beautiful to breathtaking. Now was his time. Reaching into his jacket pocket, he eased down onto one knee and opened the box and held it up. Mia Lexington, would you do me the honor of becoming my wife? Before he'd even gotten the words out, he was tackled to the ground as Mia threw herself at him, yelling,
Yes, yes, yes!
She peppered him with kisses all over his face before her lips took his in a kiss that went on, until loud cheering reached his still ringing ears. Alex sat up and placed the ring on her finger, just as a little body squeezed itself between them. Zane looked adorable in his tux and his hair gelled.
Wow, don't you look handsome, baby?
Alex helped Mia stand, and she picked Zane up and hugged him, kissing both his cheeks.
I knows.
Zane nodded enthusiastically.
Grandma, Grandpa, and everybody's have told me.
Mia laughed, and so did he. Before Mia could see all the people, Alex held her hand and brought her closer to him. There is more.
More?
She whispered like she wasn't sure she heard him. Yes, more. Smiling at her, he took a calming breath in and slowly let it out, letting his fluttering stomach settle. Marry me now. Marry me now in front of all my family and our friends. Her gaze widened, and she looked around her again, and Alex saw the realization hit her. She opened her mouth and closed it several times. He swore his heart stopped beating as he awaited her answer. Finally, she mumbled, Now? I don't have a dress, though. He laughed in relief and gathered her to him, kissing her. Zane pushed at him.
They're kissing again,
he groaned. Beth has your dress. So will you? He asked. Tears streamed down her face as she nodded frantically. So, yes? He smirked when she giggled and then yelled so everyone could hear.
Yes! Yes, I'll marry you now!
Everyone cheered and whistled around them, and before Alex could say anything else, Mia was whisked away from him by his mother, sister, and Beth to go get ready. Now that the hard part of asking her was out of the way, the easy and best bit was to come. Marrying the woman he loved.
How does it feel to be married?
Mia stared at her smiling best friend Beth and couldn't shake the dreamlike days she was in. She had given up on fairy tales long ago, but today Mia felt like a princess, and her day had ended with her marrying her prince. Her Cinderella-style dress sparkled in the night as the fairy lights caught the shining sheen of the fabric. Mia had never felt more beautiful than she did tonight. After she'd said yes to Alex, she'd been whisked away to the bathrooms that had been fixed up with carpet and lit up with lights. The table sat in one corner, with the makeup artist in the dress hung in another corner. Beth and Alex's family had gotten her dream wedding down to the very last detail. Mia had become a blubbering mess as she thanked them all and found out what more was going on. Half an hour later, in record time, thanks to all the help she had, Mia walked down to the grass area where a flowered-covered arch stood, and a man she didn't recognize stood with Alex. Alex's father agreed to walk her down the aisle, The man she didn't recognize was the celebrant, and he performed the ceremony. After signing the marriage certificate, she was announced as Mrs. Mia Douglas. Mia knew that once the celebrant had sent the records off to the National Registry, she could legally change her name, and she would. She felt so privileged to become a part of the Douglas family. It feels great, amazing, happier than I can ever remember being, she answered Beth. Good, you deserve that and more. Beth hugged her again, and Mia squeezed her tight. Thank you again for all your help in this. Mia kissed Beth's cheek. It was nothing, really. I would do anything for you, Mia. You're my best friend. Pulling Beth to her again for another hug, Mia kissed both her cheeks and resisted the urge to cry. She was the luckiest woman on earth to have all these amazing people in her life. Arms wrapped around her waist and brought her against a hard body she knew very well. She shivered as heat raced through her when his husky voice reached her ears. It's time for us to leave, wife. His breath heated her neck before she felt his lips brush over her tingling skin. Biting her lip to contain her moan, she leaned back against her husband. Let's go, husband. She grinned in pleasure at his new title, spun in his embrace, and kissed him. Easing away, she smiled up at him. I love you, husband. I love you too, wife. He reached down and scooped her up, cradling her in his arms, and her husband whisked her away. Epilogue. Alex rubbed her stomach. She was humongous. Bed rest sucked, but the attention she received from Alex was awesome. He was so proud of himself. Mia was surprised he didn't tattoo on his forehead. I got my wife pregnant with triplets. He was so damn full of himself, like he'd performed a feat no one had ever done. It didn't matter that she was the one who incubated the babies or gave birth to them. In Alex's eyes, he was the god. This time, it looks like an alien's about to rip its way out of you. Slapping the back of his head, Mia wiggled her way to a sitting position and glared at the idiot that was her husband. That is not something you say to your 7.5-month pregnant wife who is on bed rest because she is incubating your daughters. And a great job you're doing, too. He sat up and did his best to look innocent and sorry. Mia wasn't buying it. Snip, snip. She snapped at him. No more. This is the last time you get to look at my stomach and watch a baby. Or in this case, babies look like they're trying to rip me open to get out. You're getting the snip. She'd been threatening that since she found out she was pregnant again. It was something she reminded him daily since finding out this pregnancy she was having triplets. In the almost 6 years they'd been married, this was the 3rd time she'd been pregnant. Apparently, she was that 1% that the pill didn't work on. When she fell pregnant 7 months after giving birth to their son Jason, she argued with the doctor that she couldn't be pregnant because she was on the pill. That was when she learned she was the lucky 1% who the pill didn't work for. Mia was highly fertile. After Rowan was born, Mia made damn sure they used a condom anytime Alex came near her. 7.5 months ago, on their anniversary, Alex had gone above and beyond, and they forgot to use a condom. Now, voila, she was pregnant again. And not with just 1 baby, but 3. Peace and quiet in their house was rare with 3 boys. Alex's parents were amazing, and Mia was sure without them she would have gone insane. They helped her get her accounting degree, because without them she never would have left her babies to go to university. Alex was everything a girl could dream of and more, and Mia knew how lucky she was to have him. Sure, she'd learned he wasn't perfect. They fought, but they never went to bed angry with each other. They ended every day by saying, I love you, to each other. Mia loved Alex more every day. He might drive her crazy, like telling her an alien looked like it would burst out of her, but she wouldn't change him or the time she spent with him for anything. If someone had told Mia 7 years ago that she would meet a guy and fall head over heels in love with him, marry him, and give him 5 children, she would have laughed her ass off. But meeting Alex was one of the best things that ever happened to her. Hearing fighting coming from down the hall, Mia groaned and attempted to get off the bed, forgetting for a moment she was on bed rest. Alex's hand gently pushed her back on the bed, and he kissed both her cheeks before brushing his lips over hers. Don't worry, sweetheart. I'll sort them out. He kissed her forehead before easing away. I love you. Thank you. He paused at the doorway and raised his eyebrow. For everything. She hugged her stomach. For all you've given me. I love you. The grin that came over his face was so sexy. His gaze traveled up and down her body, and she heeded, loving that even in this stage he found her attractive. When his gaze caught hers again, his smile vanished, and he nodded in the direction of her stomach. I'll book in for the snip. I love you. Damn, she loved this man. Before she could reply, Rowan screamed, I'm telling, I only punched you a little. Closing her eyes, she took a deep, calming breath in and slowly let it out. Opening her eyes, she growled when she saw Alex chuckling. Thank God these are girls. Alex's smile vanished, and Mia relaxed back on the bed as he left to deal with the boys. Life was good. This has been Earning Her Love, written by Hazel Gower, narrated by Andrea Mitchell. Copyright 2016 by Hazel Gower. Production copyright 2017 by Hazel Gower.
Audible hopes you have enjoyed this program.